Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into a world where your day begins long before the sun even considers rising, where the darkness feels thick and gritty, and where you already know you're late before you even open your eyes. You stand in the cramped corner that you call a sleeping space, feeling the woven reed mat sticking to your skin after a hot, airless night. Outside, the faintest blue of dawn hints behind the mud brick walls, and the smell of yesterday's dust hangs stubbornly in the air. You take a breath, slow, careful, and you brace yourself for a day you already know will feel longer than the Nile itself. And yes, you probably wouldn't survive this daily rhythm, but that's part of tonight's fun. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. If you're awake enough to type, tell me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step outside into the pale pre-dawn coolness, savouring the last few minutes before the heat begins its daily assault. Your joints still feel stiff. Sleep never quite resets you in this life, and you rub your hands together, trying to coax warmth into your fingers. You can hear other servants stirring in nearby quarters, soft coughs, quiet footsteps, a clay jar clinking against another. There's no rooster here to wake you, no cheerful morning routine, just a knowing pressure in your chest telling you that your overseer expects perfection before the household ever stirs. As you move toward the courtyard, you can already feel the sand sneaking between your toes. No matter how often you sweep your corner, the dust always finds a way back, like an overly clingy neighbour. You stretch your back, wince, and mentally prepare yourself for the first set of tasks. Historians still argue whether the majority of servants lived on household grounds or in shared clusters nearby, but either way, your mornings always begin long before the elite even roll over on their cushioned beds. You head toward the storeroom, where you'll need to gather tools for the day, a few baskets, a broom, maybe a jar for water, and you move with that special morning slowness that only people who work too much understand. A beetle scurries across your path, completely unbothered by your looming exhaustion. You envy it for half a second. Tiny legs, simple life, no supervisors. A mainstream historical fact pops into your head uninvited. One of the scribes once mentioned it while scolding a younger servant. Elite households like this one sometimes kept a dozen or more servants, depending on wealth and status. That means there's always someone around you who's more tired than you, someone who works harder, someone whose hands are rougher. A comforting thought, in a slightly depressing way. You adjust the strap of the woven bag over your shoulder and make your way toward the outer courtyard, ready to sweep, tidy, and prep it before anyone important glances at it. The faint glow of the sky gets a touch brighter, revealing the outlines of palm trunks and the jagged edges of pottery left out from the night before. You move quickly, because the window for quiet work is short. Once the household wakes, requests start flying at you like arrows in some dramatic battle poem, minus the glory plus the yelling. As you sweep, your mind wanders. You think about that quirky tidbit one of the older servants told you. Some households believed starting the day with the wrong foot, literally stepping out of bed with the left foot first, brought bad luck. You chuckle softly. You can't even remember which foot you used this morning, so hopefully the universe is feeling generous. If bad luck shows up today, you'll blame the beetle. You finish sweeping and begin arranging the courtyard mats so they look intentional instead of trampled. You wipe down a table that no one will thank you for cleaning. You adjust a water jug so it sits just right, the way the mistress prefers. She once said she could feel when something was off by a finger's width, and yes, you absolutely believe she would wake up cranky if the jug were 2 centimeters out of place. You mutter a tiny joke under your breath about the gods needing to invent a measuring tape already, something with nice little hieroglyphs and a divine stamp of approval. You pause for a moment, letting yourself look at the pink line of dawn spreading across the horizon. It's quiet, peaceful, almost enough to make you forget how long your day will be. You feel the coolness fading fast, and with it, the last shred of morning ease. Another servant passes by offering a tired smile. You return it because you're all in this together, this endless loop of chores, hierarchy, and quiet resilience. As the light strengthens, you start checking the household's outer spaces, making sure everything looks untouched and perfect. You run your fingertips over a carved wooden doorframe, feeling the grain, the slight chips from years of use. You imagine the craftsman who built it, likely proud of his work. Funny how so many people's pride ends up as someone else's chore. You take a deep breath and steady yourself. The day is about to begin in full, and you have to be ready. There's no room for sluggishness once the first elite footsteps echo through the hallways. You move inside to prepare the main room, fluffing cushions made of fine linen, material you only touch as part of your job. You straighten a painted papyrus scroll on the wall, careful not to smudge the pigments. A soft breeze slips through a window, and you wish it would stay like this all day. But you know better. Egypt's heat is patient, and it will arrive soon, like an uninvited guest who never leaves. A distant voice calls for a lamp to be lit. Another asks for cool water. And just like that, the morning's quiet ends. You swallow your sigh and step forward, ready to begin the chain reaction of tasks that will carry you all the way until nightfall. Your day has officially begun. You move quietly toward the inner rooms, already feeling the mental shift from the soft calm of dawn to the sharper alertness you need once the household begins stirring. Tasks before the household stirs, it's a whole invisible world of preparation, and you're the main character whether anyone notices or not. You slip past the doorway with practiced ease, avoiding the loose reed mat that always tries to trip you like it's auditioning for a comedy show. One day you'll fix it. Today is not that day. Your first job is to refresh the incense burners. You kneel beside the carved stand and tap out yesterday's ash, watching the tiny grey flakes drift like lazy snow. It's oddly soothing, one of the few tasks that doesn't involve either heat or yelling, so you drag it out for an extra few seconds. You grind a fresh pinch of frankincense resin, appreciating the rich scent that rises. It's fragrant in a way you never quite get used to, warm and citrusy, filling the room with the promise of morning ritual. A mainstream historical fact floats through your mind. Incense wasn't just about smell. Egyptians believed it purified the air and pleased the gods. You joke to yourself that it might also mask the odour of servants who didn't get a chance to bathe yesterday. You place the new incense carefully, making sure the arrangement looks intentional. The mistress has a keen eye, too keen if you ask anyone who works here, and she could probably spot a crooked incense stick from across the estate. You smile faintly at the thought of her lecturing the gods about symmetry. Next, you head to the storeroom again to prepare the household's morning water. The main jars must be topped off and arranged so they look full but not too full. Another mysterious preference. You lift the clay jug with both hands, feeling the coarse texture under your fingers. These jugs are heavier than they look, and you swear they grow denser every week, like they're absorbing your complaints. You pour slowly, controlling the flow so it doesn't splash. A quiet joke slips through your thoughts. Maybe someday someone will invent a lighter jar, but until then, your biceps are apparently part of the water delivery system. As you tidy the area, another servant appears in the doorway. A younger one, eyes barely open, hair sticking out at angles the gods themselves couldn't explain. He mumbles something about oversleeping, and you shake your head with mock disapproval. You both know oversleeping by even a few minutes can mean an entire cascade of problems. Historians still argue whether strict household discipline was universal or varied from estate to estate, but in your experience, it doesn't matter. The fear of being caught late is all the motivation anyone needs. Together you begin arranging trays for the household's morning offerings: fresh bread, a small bowl of figs, a drizzle of honey if it's available. Today, the honey pot is less than half full, and you sigh internally. The bees have not been generous this season. You place everything with care, making sure the presentation looks effortless even though you've adjusted the bread 3 times already. Presentation is everything. At least that's what every noble says right before telling you that you put something in the wrong place. The younger servant grins as you nudge a piece of fruit a single finger width to the left. "They'll still eat it," he whispers, and you give him a look that says, "Don't tempt fate." The gods of household order are watching, and you're not about to anger them before breakfast. Once the offering tray is set, you turn to the sleeping chambers. Entering while the household still slumbers is a delicate dance. You must move silently, breathe quietly, and pretend you don't notice the snores that could wake half the village. You pull back the woven curtains to let a sliver of natural light in. Not too much, just enough to signal morning without disturbing anyone. You straighten cushions that shifted during the night, and adjust blankets that have twisted into shapes you're pretty sure defy geometry. A quirky tidbit you once overheard from an elderly caretaker slides into your memory. Some Egyptians believe that dreams travelled out of the body with the rising sun. You smile as you smooth the linen sheet. If that's true, the master's dreams are currently tangled in this blanket like a confused ghost trying to escape. You step back from the bed quietly, making sure the floor is clean of dust and stray threads. Dust, you've learned, is your constant companion. You sweep it in the morning, sweep it at midday, sweep it at night, and it still returns like an enthusiastic sandy boomerang. You half wonder if the grains multiply when you're not looking. As the sky brightens further, you light a small oil lamp in the hallway, a signal for other servants that the household is officially in its pre-wake stage. The lamp flickers, casting long shadows on the wall. You pause, watching the oil tremble slightly. There's something calming about a flame at dawn, standing between darkness and the day's chaos. Then comes the critical moment. Preparing the mistress's personal items, you lay out her comb, her ointment jar, her linen sash, each in its designated place. She insists on a specific order: comb left, jar center, sash neatly folded to the right. One time, someone placed the jar on the sash by mistake, and the entire staff heard about it for a week. You place everything perfectly, stepping back to judge your work with the precision of an artist. It's funny how much of your life revolves around objects you're not allowed to use yourself. A soft thud echoes from the main hall, another servant closing a door too loudly. You wince. The household isn't awake yet, but noise has a way of travelling in the early morning. You hold your breath, listening for movement. Nothing. Disaster averted. For now. You finish the final quick inspection of the hallway, smoothing your tunic as you prepare to transition into the visible part of your job. Soon the household will rise, stretch, and begin requesting things you've already prepared hours ago. They'll never know how much of your morning happened before their eyes even opened. But you know, and that's enough to keep you going. You take one last quiet breath before stepping into the main room, ready to greet the day that has already demanded so much from you. You step into the main room just as the first real sunlight begins to sneak its way past the shutters, and with it comes the familiar shift. The air thickens, the shadows sharpen, and the day officially becomes hotter than your patience. Heat in Egypt isn't subtle. It doesn't creep. It doesn't politely warm the room. It pounces on you the moment the sun clears the horizon, like some overexcited household cat that never learned boundaries. You already feel it brushing against your skin, raising the temperature of every surface around you. You wipe your hands on your tunic, not because they're dirty, but because you know what's coming. Work that grows heavier and stickier with every passing minute. You start moving toward the open courtyard, and the warmth hits you full in the face. It's not terrible yet. Early morning heat is like an opening act, hinting at the chaos to come. But you know where this is going. By midday, you'll feel like you're working inside a bread oven. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your thoughts. Many Egyptian houses were built with thick mud brick walls to help absorb heat during the day and slowly release it at night. You appreciate the architecture in theory, but right now all you feel is the rising temperature bouncing off every surface. You step outside and immediately squint. The sunlight bounces off pale sand and stone like it's personally offended by your eyeballs. You take a deep breath of warming air and shake your head. The sun is not your friend. The younger servant beside you mutters, "Here we go again," and you nod. It's the shared Egyptian equivalent of Mondays, man. Your job for the next stretch is to check the household boundaries, make sure the entryway is swept, the gate is secure, and no stray pottery is lying around threatening to become someone's morning complaint. You move along the wall, noticing how the heat is already softening the edges of your energy. You joke quietly to yourself that if someone doesn't invent shade on wheels soon, you're going to start carrying a palm leaf over your head like a makeshift hat. Honestly, people would think it's stylish. You reach the small storage alcove near the rear entrance and begin inspecting the reed baskets. They need to be placed neatly, lids on tight, because if one scorpion decides to crawl in and surprise someone later, guess whose fault it will be? Yours. Always yours. You shake one basket gently, no unwelcome rattling, and set it aside. As you work, a quirky little tidbit pops into your memory. One servant swore that putting a dab of crocodile fat on the doorway kept pests away. Another servant swore it kept your friends away too, because the smell could knock a donkey unconscious. You opted out of that method. By now the heat presses a bit heavier against your shoulders. You feel sweat beginning to form, sticking your tunic to your back in that special instant discomfort way. You wipe your forehead and mutter something about Ra needing to calm down. If he insists on riding his solar bark across the sky every day, maybe he could dim the brightness just a little. You're pretty sure it wouldn't break any cosmic rules. You carry a broom back toward the central courtyard, and the sunlight has already changed the ground's texture. Cool firmness turning into warm grit. Every step stirs tiny bits of sand that cling to your feet like you're a walking magnet. You remind yourself that servants often worked barefoot, and the sensation is normal, but you still find yourself dramatically sighing when a pebble sneaks under your heel like it's auditioning for most annoying object in Egypt. You start sweeping again, but slower now. Not because you're lazy, if anything, servants in ancient Egypt moved with practiced speed, but because the rising heat forces you into a measured rhythm. You push the broom, step, breathe, push again. The sound of swishing reeds blends with the buzzing of flies that have decided you're their morning entertainment. A scholar once told the household children that Egypt had predictable weather patterns. Historians still argue whether that predictability made life easier or just meant you had no break from the heat. From your perspective, predictable just means you get sweaty every day without exception. The mistress steps briefly into the courtyard, blinking against the brightness. You stop sweeping instantly, not because you need a break, although that would be wonderful, but because she has a talent for spotting imperfections. She glances around, nods once, then retreats inside. You swear she could sense dust approaching even before it lands. When she leaves, you resume your work, though your mind wanders toward the shade near the far wall. You consider stepping over for just a moment, maybe a single breath of coolness, but then you hear another servant murmuring your name from across the space. You look over to see him holding 2 amphorae of water, his arms trembling from the weight. You hurry over to help, the heat slapping your skin again as you cross the sunlit courtyard. Together you carry the amphorae toward the kitchen, both of you, grunting in that quiet, resigned way of people who have done this too many times to complain out loud. "If I faint," he whispers dramatically, "just drag me into the shade before the cats find me." You laugh, quietly, because you must, but it feels good. Even in the heat, humour is a tiny oasis. Inside the kitchen, the air is thick with warmth and the faint smell of last night's cooking. You set the amphora down carefully and stretch your sore arms. The younger servant fans himself with a piece of pottery shard, clearly proud of his makeshift invention. You steal it from him playfully to try it, but it does absolutely nothing. You both agree that the air is simply too stubborn to move today. You head back outside because there's still sweeping to do, and, of course, the heat has no intention of slowing down. The sunlight is now fully awake, blazing across the walls, washing everything in brightness so strong it feels like the world is made of light and sweat. You inhale slowly and remind yourself that heat has shaped Egypt for thousands of years. It's shaped the people, the work, the schedule, even the architecture. And here you are, another tiny part of that daily dance between survival and sunlight. You lift the broom again and accept the truth. The heat wins every day. But you still show up, you still work. And in a strange way, that persistence becomes its own kind of strength. You take a moment to breathe before heading out again, because the next task is one that every servant knows too well: fetching water. Not the cute, leisurely, wander down to a spring and enjoy nature kind. No, this is the carry a heavy jar across uneven ground while pretending you're not dying inside version. You lift the clay jar, feel its rough texture scrape lightly against your palms, and steady it against your hip. The sun is still climbing, but the heat has already begun its daily mission to melt your willpower. You step out of the courtyard and onto the path that leads toward the water source. It's not a long walk, not tragic, not heroic, but it's long enough to make you mutter at least one sarcastic comment to yourself. As you start down the dusty trail, your sandals kicking up tiny ghosts of sand, you remind yourself why this job matters. Households rise and fall on water, and if the morning jars aren't full, the entire day spirals into chaos. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. Ancient Egyptians relied heavily on stored water, especially during the dry season, because indoor plumbing was not a thing unless you count gravity and hope. The jar you're carrying is not yet full, but even empty vessels weigh more than your optimism. You hold it carefully with both hands, treating it like a cranky child who might start screaming if you tilt it even slightly. You make your way toward the well, or in this household's case, one of the communal water areas shared by nearby workers. As you walk, the sun bounces off the pale mud brick walls, doubling the glare. You squint and mutter something about Ra needing sunglasses. By the time you reach the water area, several other servants are already there, each balancing a jar, each wearing the same universal expression. Please, let this be quick. You join the quiet line and wait your turn. The air is filled with soft chatter, complaints about sleep, jokes about chores, a whispered rumour about someone accidentally waking the master yesterday. You smile at that one. Mistakes like that become household legends. When your turn comes, you kneel beside the water basin and dip your jar carefully. The water is cool, and for a fleeting moment your hands feel almost refreshed. The jar fills slowly, the liquid rising like it's deliberately taunting your arms. You know the moment it's full because the weight shifts dramatically, almost making you wobble. You grit your teeth and steady yourself. Full jars are heavier than heartbreak, and you can quote that from personal professional experience. As you lift the jar, a quirky tidbit pops into your mind, one you overheard from a passing trader. Some Egyptians believed that whispering a blessing into the water before carrying it kept you from spilling a drop. You're not above trying anything at this point, so you murmur a soft, improvised blessing about sturdy legs and obedient jars. The servant next to you raises an eyebrow but says nothing. Let them judge. If this works, you'll be the genius of the well. You start the journey back, walking with short, controlled steps. The jar's weight digs into your forearms, and you have to resist the urge to adjust it every 2 seconds. You pass a few neighbours, farmers, potters, one older man repairing a fishing net. Everyone gives you the same sympathetic glance, the one that says, "Ah, yes, the water struggle. Been there." It's the closest thing to emotional solidarity anyone gestures toward before breakfast. Halfway back, your grip begins slipping. Of course it does. Clay doesn't care about your feelings. You shift the jar slightly, praying it doesn't tip. The sun watches you like it's judging your technique. You whisper your earlier blessing again, this time adding a small plea. The jar continues wobbling, unimpressed. The younger servant from earlier appears behind you, carrying his own full jar. He calls out, "Don't drop it! The mistress will think you're practicing for a comedy play." You laugh through gritted teeth and tell him you're saving your comedy debut for after work, preferably in a cooler century. He snorts and keeps walking, his jar dangerously more stable than yours. Show off. The heat climbs steadily with every step. Sweat beads on your forehead, trickling down your temples, making your grip even more unreliable. You mutter a few choice words under your breath, the PG-13 kind, and push forward. Historians still argue whether servants had any form of protective gloves or cloth wraps for heavy lifting. You personally argue that if they did, someone hid them from you. At one point, a stray cat darts across your path, forcing you to stop abruptly. The jar sways dangerously. You freeze. The universe holds its breath. The cat stops, looks up at you like you were the one who almost caused chaos, and then casually strolls away. You whisper, "I hope Bastet gives you extra fleas," but only loud enough for the dust to hear. When you finally reach the courtyard again, your arms are trembling, your shoulders aching, and you've aged approximately 10 spiritual years. You set the jar down carefully, so carefully that it's practically a religious ritual, and sigh with genuine relief. The first jar is done, and now, of course, you must fetch another. Because water, like drama, never stops flowing in an Egyptian household. You take a moment to shake out your hands, feeling every muscle protest like the chorus of a very dramatic play. The younger servant wanders in a few seconds later and sets down his jar with a flourish, as if he just returned from conquering a small kingdom. You roll your eyes and toss a bit of sand at him. He dodges easily, smirking. You move the filled jar inside and pour some of the water into smaller daily-use vessels. The sound of water trickling into clay bowls is soft, rhythmic, almost meditative. You let your breath fall into the same pattern. Moments, like this, quiet sounds, simple movements, they're small anchors that help you get through the larger, more exhausting parts of the day. You step back outside into the heat again, preparing yourself for round 2 of the water run. You pick up the empty jar, mentally negotiating with your muscles. They're not thrilled, but they'll cooperate. They always do. because in this life, water doesn't carry itself, and you still have hours before the sun reaches its fullest, hottest, most unreasonable point. You take a steadying breath, then you start walking again, the road stretching before you, shimmering slightly in the growing heat. Another jar, another journey, another reminder that, in the silent work of ancient Egypt, endurance is not just expected, it's the only way forward. You return from the second water run with shoulders that feel like they've been carved from stone, not the elegant temple-worthy kind, but the crumbly, please don't touch me kind. You set the jar down and allow yourself a single long exhale before moving toward the kitchen. Because now comes the next stage of your endlessly glamorous servant life. Kitchen fires, meals you prepare but rarely taste, and the wonderful sensation of standing beside a clay oven in the growing Egyptian heat. You push open the woven doorway curtain and enter the kitchen space, where the temperature instantly jumps by 10 degrees, minimum. The moment you step inside, you feel like you've walked into the mouth of a yawning hippo god. Clay ovens, warming stones, pots, simmering bowls. It's a whole symphony of heat and smell, and you already know you'll walk out soaked in essence of roasted everything. You greet the older cook, who has been awake longer than any of you. Her hair is tied back, her hands move with the sharp precision of someone who knows every motion by muscle memory, and she has the uncanny ability to scold 3 people at once without turning her head. She waves you closer and points to a pile of ingredients waiting to be transformed into a morning meal. Onions, herbs, ground emmer, and a small fish that still looks mildly offended about being caught. Your first task is basic: chopping onions. You take a knife, sit on the low stool, and begin. Almost immediately your eyes water, which makes the younger servant walking past snicker and say, "Crying already? The day's barely started." You resist the urge to throw an onion at him. You simply fan your face dramatically and mutter something about onion spirits seeking revenge. A quirky tidbit you once heard pops into your mind. Some people believed that burning certain herbs kept your eyes from tearing up. You glance around. No herbs burning, just your dignity. You wipe your eyes and keep chopping. The cook moves behind you, stirring something in a clay pot, muttering, half to herself, half to the gods, about needing better quality herbs. You hear the bubbling of porridge, the crackling of the oven, the faint hiss of steaming pots. The kitchen is its own living creature, with its own moods and weird little rules. One of those rules is simple: never touch the cook's spices unless you want to be temporarily unalive. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Wealthy households had access to a huge range of foods: bread, beer, vegetables, fish, dates, figs, honey. Servants like you prepare those foods, smell them all day, and often end up eating the driest bread or thin broth while pretending not to notice the feast you helped create. You lean over the table now and inhale deeply, catching the warm, earthy scent of emmer dough rising. It smells incredible. You will absolutely not get a piece. The cook hands you a paddle and motions toward the oven. Time to bake the morning bread. You shape the dough, your fingers sticky with flour, and slide each loaf inside. The heat blasts your face, so intense that you instinctively lean back. You wonder, not for the first time, why anyone hasn't invented a wooden stick twice as long. Historians still argue whether Egyptian ovens were intentionally designed to double as punishment devices. You personally believe the answer is yes. As the bread bakes, you prepare the seasoning mix for the fish dish. You grind cumin seeds, coriander, and a pinch of salt using a stone mortar. The aroma rises in warm waves and your stomach grumbles. You pretend you didn't hear it. You absolutely heard it. The younger servant returns carrying a basket of figs and fresh greens. He drops it on the table and says, "Try not to eat any." You flick a crumb of bread at his forehead. It bounces off pathetically, but you feel emotionally victorious. You begin washing the figs. Their skins are soft, delicate, slightly sticky. The cool water running over your hands feels heavenly after standing near the oven. You linger on purpose. The cook eyes you suspiciously, but says nothing. Maybe she understands. Once the figs are cleaned, you help prepare the plates. You lay out dishes with practiced precision. Bread loaves arranged neatly, herbs added for colour, small bowls of honey placed in decorative patterns. Presentation matters. The household expects beauty even in breakfast. You sometimes wonder if they notice, but you place everything carefully anyway, partly because you're proud of your work, and partly because you don't want to redo the entire tray if someone decides a fig is pointing the wrong direction. As the meal nears completion, you prepare one small bowl of leftover porridge for the servant's breakfast. It's thin, barely sweetened, but warm. You take a quick sip, just enough to keep your stomach from staging a rebellion. You'll eat properly later, maybe, depending on how chaotic the day becomes. You clean the cutting board, wipe down the tables, and sweep the floor again. Dust never stops. It sneaks in through the cracks, clings to bowls, settles on your arms, and mixes with the heat to form the finest Egyptian seasoning. Servant's daily struggle. You should bottle it. The cook hands you a tray loaded with bread, fish, greens, and figs. Careful, she warns, pointing a floury finger at you. If you drop it, I'll feed your sandals to the oven. You nod solemnly. You believe her. You carry the tray toward the main room, balancing it with the precision of a performer walking a tightrope. Your arms ache, your legs feel shaky, and your brain whispers, "Do not stumble." A cat slinks past your feet, testing the limits of your balance. You manage to dodge it. Barely. As you approach the eating area, you straighten your posture, slow your breathing, and set the tray down with a soft, controlled motion. Everything looks perfect. You take a small step back and let yourself admire the work. Not out loud, of course, because the household isn't exactly handing out compliments. You return to the kitchen, where the cook has already started planning the midday meal. You sigh dramatically, and she smirks, shaking her head. She knows. Everyone knows. The kitchen never stops. It's a fire that feeds itself. You step outside again, letting the hot but fresh air touch your skin after the smoky warmth of the kitchen. You take a slow breath, roll your shoulders, and prepare yourself for the next set of tasks waiting beyond the doorway. And as always, you're already running behind. You barely have time to savor the brief breath of air outside the kitchen before someone calls your name. Again. This time it's for textile duty. Of course it is. Because in this household, cloth doesn't weave itself, laundry doesn't fold itself, and torn hems definitely don't mend themselves. You head toward the weaving area with a resigned little nod, already feeling the phantom ache in your fingers. Today's going to be a long day of looms, thread, and that special brand of monotony that makes your brain drift into philosophical questions like, why do humans need clothing? And, could we all agree on a single uniform to make life easier? The weaving room is cooler than the kitchen, anything would be, but it still holds the warmth of the morning sun. You step inside and see the tall, vertical loom standing against the far wall, like the patient, judgmental guardian it is. The half-finished linen cloth hangs from it, threads waiting in perfect parallel lines. You run your fingers lightly along them, feeling the faint tickle of fibers. Egyptian linen, even in servant-quality form, has a softness that surprises you every time. You settle onto the small, low bench in front of the loom. The position is familiar, knees folded, back slightly hunched, fingers poised. You pick up the shuttle and begin the slow, rhythmic motion that's been part of Egyptian daily life for millennia. Over, under, pull tight. Over, under, smooth out. The motion becomes a quiet chant through your muscles, each movement precise yet strangely soothing. A mainstream historical fact echoes in your mind. Egypt was famous for its linen, not just locally, but across the ancient world. Trade vessels carried Egyptian linen far beyond the Nile, praising its fineness, its durability, its pale beauty. You look at the unfinished cloth in front of you and shake your head. It still amazes you that something so valued elsewhere is the same material you spend hours sweating over, without ever wearing the finest version yourself. Your fingers slip slightly on one thread, and you mutter something under your breath. The younger servant weaving beside you snorts. "Careful," he whispers. "The loom spirits get offended." You raise an eyebrow. Loom spirits. That's new. He leans in conspiratorially. "I heard it from a trader last week. Said if you anger the spirits, they tangle your thread on purpose. Makes sense, doesn't it?" You stare at the unavoidable knot that just formed in your warped threads and groan. Maybe the spirits are real, and petty. As you work to undo the knot, sweat trickles down your temple again. The heat isn't as aggressive here as outside, but weaving demands stillness, concentration, patience, and patience under heat feels like holding your breath underwater. You tug the knot gently, trying not to make it worse. The entire loom seems to hold its breath with you. "Don't pull too hard," the older weaving supervisor says as she walks by. Her voice is calm but carries the weight of decades of textile work. She glances at your thread, nods approvingly, and moves on. You admire her confidence. She could probably weave in complete darkness and still produce perfect cloth. You, on the other hand, occasionally feel like the threads are conspiring against you. As you resume weaving, your mind wanders. That's the blessing and curse of textile work. You have plenty of time to think. You think about the endless lengths of cloth you help produce, fine linens for the household, coarse cloth for labourers, decorative strips for clothing, wrappings for offerings, and of course, all the little mending jobs needed daily. Historians still argue whether textile workers in large estates were considered highly skilled or simply part of general labour. You know the truth. It's both. You need precision, dexterity, patience. But you're still a servant, and the household rarely sees the hours behind each fold of fabric. A breeze sneaks in through the window slits, lifting the hanging thread slightly. You pause and savour it. The air smells faintly of dust and lotus oil from the nearby purification room. A nice change from the onion-scented kitchen earlier. You stretch your back quietly, hoping no one hears the faint crack that escapes your spine. The younger servant beside you hums a little tune, something soft, rhythmic, meant to match the weaving pattern. You smirk. You know that tune. It's from a silly marketplace song about a fisherman who fell asleep on his raft and floated, halfway to Nubia. You whisper, "If you sing the chorus, I walk out." He grins but stops humming. You switch tasks to smoothing and measuring the completed portion of the cloth. You run your palm gently over the weave, checking for irregularities. The fabric feels cool, smooth, and evenly spaced. You allow yourself a tiny internal celebration. Cloth that smooth earns you fewer lectures later. After that comes spindle work. You pick up the hand spindle and begin twisting fibres into thread. It's delicate work. Too much twist and the thread snaps, too little and it falls apart. You find a rhythm, letting the spindle drop and spin, drop and spin. The motion is hypnotic. It lulls your mind into that dreamy middle space between awareness and sleep, the place where time feels softer and your thoughts wander like lazy clouds. Someone enters the room, a maid carrying laundry in a woven basket. She greets everyone with a tired smile and starts sorting tunics. You glance at the pile and immediately spot patch jobs you completed last week. They're holding up well. A small, quiet win. You don't get praise, but you do get the satisfaction of seeing your work survive a week of household chaos. Your mind drifts to a quirky belief. Some Egyptians thought weaving mimicked the work of the goddess Neith, the divine weaver who formed the world. You like that idea, that every thread you pull is part of some cosmic tapestry, even if, realistically, you're just making another tunic for someone who will spill date wine on it by lunchtime. As the hour stretches on, your fingers grow tired. The fibres cling to your skin, your nails catch on stray threads, your back starts whispering threats about tomorrow aches. You pause to flex your fingers, wiggling them like you're performing an awkward dance. The younger servant laughs again. "Don't summon the loom spirits," he warns. You throw a small bit of unused fibre at him, which floats gracefully to the floor, your least threatening attack yet. Still, you keep going. The work must continue. The cloth must be finished. The thread must be spun. There is no end, only progress. Eventually, the supervisor returns and inspects your work. She nods, a tiny gesture, almost unnoticeable, but to you it feels like a small blessing. "Good," she says softly. That one word carries enough encouragement to keep you going for another hour. You continue weaving until the shadow of the doorway shifts, signalling that the sun has moved again. You look down at your progress, several inches more cloth than before. It's not monumental, but it's steady, and steady is everything in this life. You stand slowly, stretching your arms overhead. Your backbone crackles like a papyrus scroll being unrolled. You wince but feel slightly taller. You smooth the threads one last time, cover the loom with a light cloth and step away. Another task complete. Another piece of the day woven into your memory. Now it's time to face whatever comes next. You leave the weaving room, rubbing your wrists, trying to coax some life back into your fingers before the next round of responsibilities hits. You barely make it 3 steps into the walkway before a familiar voice calls your name, the stern, clipped tone that means you're about to juggle orders from more people than you have brain cells left. Household hierarchies are always lurking, always shifting, and always ready to remind you where you stand, usually somewhere between indispensable and invisible. You turn and see the household steward, the man who walks like he owns the entire estate even though he technically serves someone else. His linen kilt is crisp, pleated so sharply it could cut you, and he carries a wooden staff that he definitely doesn't need but uses anyway because authority props make people feel taller. He gestures you over with 2 fingers, the universal sign for, your break is over, and I hope you weren't enjoying it. Check the guest room, he says without looking at you. The master wants it prepared before noon. And don't forget the courtyard vases. Lady Mennet complained they were dusty. You nod. Before you can even turn away, he adds, "Oh, and we're low on lamp oil, and someone must help the scribe with his writing table." Of course. Because why give 1 order when you can give 4? You bow your head slightly and move on. You don't bother asking who the guest is, or when they're arriving, or why the vases need dusting again. You learned long ago that the hierarchy prefers efficiency over curiosity. Historians still argue whether Egyptian household ranks functioned more like formal bureaucracies or organic social webs, but from your perspective, it's simple. Everyone is above you except the children and the cats. And even the cats sometimes act like your supervisors. You start with the guest room. It's one of the finer chambers, smooth white plaster walls, painted lotus motifs, polished floor tiles that gleam like someone rubbed them with ambition. You step inside and begin your routine. Straighten the reed mat, dust the carved wooden chest, fluff the sitting cushions until they look plump enough to impress even the pickiest visitor. As you adjust a decorative jar, you hear faint footsteps behind you. It's the mistress. She glides into the room with that serene expression noble women have, the one that looks peaceful but hides a razor-sharp awareness. She notices everything. You step back, hands folded, eyes lowered in polite readiness. She scans the room slowly, her gaze moving like a beam of sunlight looking for flaws. "The dais cushion," she says. You blink. She hasn't finished the sentence, but you already know what she means. You move immediately to the dais platform and adjust the cushion's angle by truly a thumb's width. She nods once. Approval achieved. Somewhere deep inside, you celebrate with a small internal confetti burst. She leaves. Without another word, and you exhale. One crisis avoided. You move on to polishing the painted pottery near the doorway, your cloth sweeping gently over the smooth surface. The intricate patterns show scenes of lotus flowers and birds, classic Egyptian artistry, beautiful enough to distract you for a moment. You smile softly. This is the part of the job you almost enjoy, touching history, maintaining beauty, feeling connected to craftspeople long gone. But that moment of peace is short-lived. A small voice calls your name again. You turn to see the scribe standing in the doorway, arms full of scrolls, ink pots, and general disaster. He looks, how to put it politely, overwhelmed. Scribes are highly respected, literate, essential. But organized? Not always. You rush to help him before he drops something important, like the master's financial records or a letter from a temple priest. He hands you an inkpot. "The writing table needs arranging," he says, "and fetch more water, and the papyrus stack is uneven, and the lamp needs trimming." This man has the energy of someone who could panic about the direction dust is blowing. You nod and follow him to his workspace. His writing table is strewn with scrolls like a dramatic artist's studio. Reed pens lie in chaotic angles, bits of dried ink cling to the edges. You clean the surface carefully, aligning each scroll by size and type. A mainstream historical fact rolls into your thoughts. Scribes trained for years to perfect their handwriting, making them elite professionals, yet they always seem one misplaced tool away from catastrophe. You sharpen a reed pen by gently carving the tip, letting thin curls of reed fall to the floor. The scribe watches anxiously, as if the pen is a fragile infant. "Not too sharp," he warns. You nod. "I know." "Not too blunt either." "I know." He relaxes, slightly. You refill his small water bowl, the one he uses to mix ink, and tidy the lamp nearby. Just as you finish, the steward appears again, arms folded, face stern. "Have you dusted the courtyard vases yet?" he asks. You say politely that you're on your way. He raises an eyebrow like he's considering whether to add another task. You brace for impact. He sighs. "Fine, but hurry. You bow your head again and hurry out to the courtyard. The vases stand tall near the entryway, beautiful, carved, eye-catching, and dust magnets of legendary proportions. You grab a damp cloth and begin wiping them down. The sun hits the clay ornaments, warming them under your hands. The texture is smooth in some places, rough in decorative grooves. You focus on each swirl, each carved line, gently brushing dust out of the narrow crevices. The work is repetitive, almost meditative, until... "Don't forget the bases," someone says behind you. You don't even turn. You already know that voice. It's the steward again, achieving his daily task of existing in at least 5 places at once. You crouch lower and wipe the bases thoroughly. You imagine the dust forming a tiny rebellion army under there. As you stand up, the younger servant approaches with a grin and whispers, "The steward's in a mood today." You snort softly. "He's always in a mood," you reply. "He was probably born in a mood." The younger servant laughs, then pretends to sweep when the steward glances over in suspicion. You finish the last vase and roll your shoulders, feeling the fatigue settle in like a familiar friend. Household hierarchies may be exhausting, but somehow you navigate them daily. The mistress with her eagle eyes, the steward with his endless demands, the scribe with his delicate nerves, the cooks, the supervisors, the guests. Everyone layered in a complex pyramid of expectation. And somewhere near the bottom of that pyramid, holding the whole thing together, is you. You straighten your tunic, take a deep breath, and move on to the next task, already waiting around the corner like an eager pet. The day isn't even close to finished. You take a slow breath and roll your shoulders back as you step away from the courtyard vases. The sun is now fully awake, bright, merciless, and absolutely convinced that your skin should feel like warm pottery. But you don't have time to focus on that, because now it's time for the part of servant life nobody appreciates. The specialized tasks, the quiet skills, the crafts you've perfected through sheer repetition. These are the things nobles rely on but pretend just happen, like the magical cleaning spirits people whisper about. Spoiler, the spirits are you. Your first stop is the storeroom. Not the main pantry. This is the tools and oddities room, where half of the household's functioning equipment lives. You step inside and inhale that particular smell. Wood, old linen, beeswax, and a faint hint of someone left a bowl here last week and regretted it. You scan the shelves and locate what you came for. Polishing stones, weaving combs, reed-cutting blades, and a small jar of fine oil used for maintaining wooden furniture and tools. You grab a cloth and the jar of oil and begin the first specialized task of this stretch, polishing the household's carved wooden furniture pieces. These aren't just chairs. These are statement objects. Low stools with lion leg carvings, armrests shaped like falcons, small tables designed to impress guests who pretend not to care. You run your fingers across the smooth wood and start your work. Small circles, gentle pressure, slow glides of the cloth. An almost meditative ritual. You've done this so many times your muscles operate from instinct. As you polish the first stool, a mainstream historical fact pops into your mind. Egyptian carpenters were among the most skilled in the ancient world, using imported cedar, acacia, and sycamore to craft furniture that could last generations. You glance at the lion leg carving. The detail is incredible. You wonder how many years it took the artisan to perfect that skill, and whether anyone appreciated him either. You finish the first stool and move to the next. The pattern repeats. Polish, inspect, wipe, admire, repeat. The movement becomes almost hypnotic, and your mind begins to drift. You think about the endless list of things you fix, maintain, weave, stitch, mend, polish, carve, and adjust every single day. Skills you've learned not from formal training, but from hands-on necessity. The younger servant eventually wanders in, holding a broken reed mat. "Can you fix this?" he asks, his expression full of that innocent optimism that suggests he might believe you can fix anything. Which, to be fair, you kind of can. You take the mat, examine the frayed edges, and spot the 2 broken reed strands causing the unravel. It's annoying, but fixable. "Give me a moment," you say. "If you fix it," he replies, "I'll give you my dessert portion tonight." You stop. "Dessert? What dessert?" he grins. "Don't know yet, but I heard the cook whining about honey shortages, so probably something tragic." You You snicker. Deal. You set aside your polishing cloth and take out your reed cutting blade. The tool is small, sharp, and worn from years of use. You trim the frayed fibres, then weave new reed strips into the pattern, tucking the ends neatly under the surrounding weave. You press your thumb lightly along the row, tight, smooth, secure. The mat is whole again. You hand it back, and the younger servant bows dramatically before leaving. As you return to polishing, a quirky tidbit bubbles up in your thoughts, something a travelling merchant once claimed. Some households believed that well-maintained furniture pleased the household gods, who in turn kept the Nile's flood predictable. You chuckle softly. If that's true, your hours of polishing must have personally saved half of Egypt. After the furniture is done, your next task involves reed tools. The household uses reed pens for writing, reed brooms for cleaning, reed mats for sitting, and reed boxes for storing small items. Reeds are your constant companion whether you like it or not. You move to the small workbench tucked into the corner of the storeroom and start trimming and sharpening the broken reed tools. You pick up a frayed broom head and begin shaving stray fibres. The repetitive sound of your blade slicing through dry reeds creates a soft, rhythmic whisper. You trim the ends to a uniform length, bind them together with fresh rope fibre and tighten the knot with your teeth because your hands are too full. It's not glamorous, but it works. Next, you shape a few replacement reed pens for the scribe. With careful strokes, you carve the tips into precise angles, testing each one by dipping it into a bit of leftover ink to see how well it draws on papyrus. Some tips write cleanly, others splatter ink like they're throwing a tiny tantrum. You sigh and adjust each, nib until it behaves. You take pride in this skill. Few servants know how to make a reed pen correctly. The scribe, bless his anxious heart, once tried to carve his own tip and ended up stabbing a hole into an expensive piece of papyrus. You've handled his pen maintenance ever since. When you finish, the storeroom supervisor enters and inspects your work with a slow nod. Good, she murmurs. Your hands are steady. It's a rare compliment, delivered so softly you might have imagined it. You smile anyway. Before you leave, you reorganize the shelves. Household storerooms have their own logic. Tools grouped by function, baskets stacked by size, jars arranged by contents. You make sure the reed mats are neatly tied, the pottery shards used for sharpening are in a tidy pile, and the tool baskets are arranged so the steward doesn't have an excuse to complain later. The mythical tool spirits probably approve too. Outside the storeroom, you're immediately pulled into another specialised task, trimming the courtyard's miniature lotus garden. It's only a few pots of water and plants, but the master insists they represent purity and tranquility. You kneel beside the small basin and remove wilted petals, skim dust from the water's surface, and adjust the stones along the edge so the arrangement looks effortlessly natural. Despite the fact you're manipulating it inch by inch like a sleep-deprived sculptor. As you lean over the basin, the water reflects your face, smudged with dust, tired but focused. You're good at this. All of it. The weaving, the mending, the polishing, the trimming, the tool maintenance. Servants don't just work hard, they become experts in a dozen things no one ever credits them for. You smooth the final lotus leaf and stand. The sun catches the water's surface, sending tiny shimmering ripples dancing over the courtyard wall. Another task mastered. Another skill quietly added to your unseen list. And now, without hesitation, you move toward the next thing waiting for you. Because in this household, skills stack endlessly, and the day never pauses long enough for you to appreciate how much you truly know. You step away from the lotus basin, brushing stray droplets from your fingers when the unmistakable sound of a hurried footsteps echoes through the hallway. Not the panicked kind, just the something important is happening and you're involved whether you like it or not kind. You turn to see one of the senior servants rushing toward you, her expression a blend of urgency and please don't make this harder than it needs to be. They're preparing for the noon ritual, she says. The household wants everything ready now. Ah, ritual days. The glamorous, sacred, ceremonially elegant events that, behind the scenes, are powered entirely by frantic, exhausted servants running around like highly trained ants. The nobles will glide through the ceremony looking serene, radiant, at one with the gods, while you'll be in the background praying you don't trip over a decorative incense stand and ruin the entire spiritual vibe. You follow her toward the ceremonial hall. The moment you cross the threshold, the air changes. It's cooler here, touched faintly by perfumed oils and lingering incense from previous rituals. Brightly painted columns rise around you, reds, blues, golds, depicting gods who probably have no idea how chaotic human rituals actually are. Sunlight filters through lattice windows, creating patterns on the tiled floor that look deceptively peaceful. You and the other servants spread out instantly, each knowing more or less what to do. You've been through this many times. You move toward the table holding the ritual implements: bronze bowls, incense cones, lotus garlands, painted fans, decorative oil lamps. Everything is beautiful. Everything is delicate. Everything is expensive. Everything is a disaster waiting to happen. A mainstream historical fact drifts in. Egyptian households, especially upper-class ones, often perform daily or seasonal rituals honoring gods, ancestors, or household spirits. These ceremonies weren't as grand as temple rituals, but they were important and absolutely required precision. And guess who ensures that precision? Definitely not the priestly class. It's you and every other servant sweating in silence. You begin arranging the bronze bowls in a perfect semicircle. Alignment is crucial. One of the older servants walks by, tilts her head, and nudges a bowl half a thumb width to the left. You adjust it back. She adjusts it again. You breathe slowly through your nose. Perfect, she finally declares. You smile bitterly and resist the urge to lecture her about geometry. On the opposite side of the room, younger servants prepare the offerings. Fresh bread, flowers, perfumed oil. You catch the scent of the lotus garlands as you pass by. It's sweet, soft, and calming, which is ironic because everyone here is on the verge of spiraling into mild nervous breakdowns. The overseer enters the room, scanning the preparations with the dramatic flair of someone judging a sculpture competition. He raises an eyebrow. "Lamp too dim," he says. "Garlands uneven, and someone fix the incense placement. It looks confused." You inhale deeply. You tell yourself he's not doing this on purpose. He's contributing to the household's spiritual welfare, or micromanaging. Historians still argue whether high-ranking household overseers had genuine religious investment, or simply liked feeling important. You have your own theory. You go to adjust the incense. The placement was fine, in your opinion, but fine isn't acceptable today. You rotate one incense cone, angle another, move a small bowl half an inch. The overseer nods solemnly, as if you've just repaired the universe. A gong sounds in the distance, the signal that the family is preparing for their elegant entrance. Cue the behind-the-scenes sprint. You and the other servants rush into final positions. One adjusts the curtains. Another lights the ceremonial lamps. Someone else disperses just enough incense to create a thin veil of aromatic smoke. Not too thick, not too light. The timing must be perfect so that it's dramatically rising when the master enters. The master and mistress glide into the room moments later, dressed in their finest linen. Smooth, flawless, shimmering in the filtered sunlight. Their jewellery catches the light like tiny captured stars. They move to the central dais with a presence that says, "We absolutely did not see the 10 servants who just dashed out of sight moments before we walked in." The ritual begins. Soft chanting, delicately poured oil, graceful gestures. You stand in the shadows, barely breathing, ready to step in if anything needs adjusting. A fan bearer becomes tired. You quietly step behind her and swap positions. A lamp flickers low. You trim the wick mid-ritual with silent precision. A flower petal falls out of place. You catch it mid-air like it's part of your training. You're basically the ninja of ceremonial logistics, but no one will ever know. The chant reaches its final lines. The smoke curls upward in perfect spirals. The master lifts a lotus offering toward the household shrine. The room glows with divine stillness, the kind nobles love to interpret as spiritual harmony, and not exhausted servants achieving perfection through panic and sweat. The ritual ends, the nobles leave, and instantly, every servant in the room drops their shoulders several centimeters. You exchange silent looks with your co-workers, the shared expression being, "We did it, again, and we're still alive." The younger servant from earlier whispers, "Do you think the gods know how much work this is?" You grin. "If they don't, they should come down here and try it once." You begin the clean-up process immediately. The room must return to calm simplicity before the next household member wanders through. You extinguish the lamps, gather the leftover flowers, scrub the bronze bowls and fold the ritual cloths neatly. The incense ash gets swept into a corner dish, and the tools return to the storeroom. As you leave the ceremonial hall, you feel the shift again, the quiet after the storm. The ritual looked elegant on the outside, but you know the truth. It was a whirlwind, held together by dozens of invisible actions, and you were part of every single one. Time to move on. The day isn't slowing down for anyone. You barely take 3 steps out of the ceremonial hall before another voice calls your name, this time softer, calmer, but unmistakably urgent. It's one of the attendants from the family shrine room, and the moment you see his expression, you know exactly what this means. Sacred duties. The kind that sound peaceful and holy, but somehow always leave you kneeling on the floor, hands cramping, sweat sneaking down your neck while your mind whispers, "Why didn't I become a potter instead?" You follow him down the shaded corridor that leads to the private shrine. The air here is different, cooler, quieter, touched with the faint smells of old incense and polished stone. As you step inside, the familiar space greets you. A beautifully carved niche holding a small statue of a household deity, a pair of offering stands, and a narrow altar draped in fine linen. Everything is arranged with precision. Everything holds layered meaning, and everything demands constant, meticulous maintenance. You kneel automatically. Your knees have memorized the exact spots on the floor where the stone is smoothest. The attendant hands you a soft brush and motions toward the statue. It's a small figure, likely a protective household god or ancestor depiction, carved from polished wood and adorned with tiny gold accents. Its surface gleams faintly in the dim light. As you brush away a thin layer of dust, a mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Wealthy Egyptian homes often maintained private shrines dedicated to gods like Bez, Taweret, or ancestor spirits. These served as spiritual anchors for daily life, protection, fertility, and good fortune. But behind every sacred ritual, servants. Servants cleaning the statue, servants preparing offerings, servants making sure the divine representation doesn't topple over mid-prayer. The household might believe that blessings flow from the gods, but you know a surprising number of them depend on your steady hands. You adjust the garland surrounding the statue, smoothing the flowers so they fan out evenly. The attendant nods approvingly, then hands you a small jar of perfumed oil. Your task now, anoint the offering stones. You dip your fingers lightly into the oil. It smells rich and herbal, with hints of myrrh and lotus, and spread it gently across the smooth stone surface. The oil glistens, catching the sunlight that slips through the tiny window slit above. For a moment it almost feels meditative. Almost. Until your foot cramps. You shift subtly, trying not to disturb the serenity of the room. The attendant pretends not to notice, though you're certain he saw. He hands you the incense next. Small cones wrapped in thin papyrus. 3 to the left, he says, 2 to the right. A simple instruction, except the incense holders are tiny, fragile, and positioned in a way that requires precise wrist control. One wrong move and the cone rolls off like a rebellious stone beetle. You position them carefully, aligning each one so the angles match. You strike the flint, light the first cone, and gently blow to coax the smoke upward. It rises in a delicate ribbon, curling like a lazy snake toward the ceiling. You repeat the process for the remaining cones until the air fills with a soft, fragrant mist. The attendant murmurs a quiet thanks. You nod, trying to keep your breathing slow, peaceful, devout servant energy intact. But deep down, your shoulders ache from earlier tasks, your arms feel like overcooked reeds, and your knees may never forgive you. You move next to the offering table. Bread, figs, a small bowl of beer. It's not a feast, but it's enough to honor the household spirits. You place each item with care, mindful of symmetry. One of the figs rolls slightly and you freeze, adjusting it with the precision of someone diffusing a tiny fruit-based bomb. A quirky tidbit comes to mind, one you learned from an older priest during a festival. Some Egyptians believed that if offerings weren't arranged properly, spirits might feel insulted and leave subtle signs of displeasure. You glance at the fig again, just to be safe, and nudge it one final millimeter into perfection. As you work, your thoughts drift to the larger world around you. The temples downriver with their towering pylons, the priests in elaborate white robes, the grand festivals where crowds gather to watch processions of sacred statues gliding through the streets. And here you are in a quiet room, performing a private version of that sacred choreography. Historians still argue whether these household rituals were genuine spiritual acts or simply social status gestures. But here in this moment, kneeling before a small wooden deity, the lines blur. Because even if nobles perform rituals for status, you can't deny the odd sense of presence in the room, the way the air feels heavy but peaceful, the way the faint incense curls around the statue like a protective veil, the way silence here feels less empty than elsewhere. Maybe that's your exhaustion talking, or maybe there's something real in the stillness. When you finish arranging the offerings, the attendant takes over the formal prayers, whispering ancient lines you've heard 100 times. You step back into the shadows, observing from your usual invisible place. The soft chant flows through the room, rhythmic and soothing. It blends with the flicker of the small oil lamp, with the scent of incense, with the quiet hum of the world outside. And for a moment, just a moment, you feel yourself letting go of the rush, the heat, the tasks piling in your mental list. The ceremony wraps around the room like a warm blanket. Then the chant ends. The attendant nods to you, your cue to begin cleanup. You gather spent incense fragments, straighten the cloth on the altar again, and adjust the basket of unused offerings so it's ready for next time. You sweep the stone floor lightly, removing the faint trail of ash left from the lamp. As you stand to leave, a soft breeze slips through the window slit, stirring the incense smoke. It creates a drifting spiral that seems almost intentional, almost like a small nod from the household deity itself. You pause, allowing yourself a tiny, private smile. Then you step back into the corridor, where the warmth immediately returns, filling your lungs and reminding you that the world outside the shrine is much less peaceful. You still have hours of tasks waiting, rooms to clean, people to answer to, objects to maintain, duties that don't care that your knees are numb from kneeling in sacred dust. But for a moment, you carried a bit of the divine, and now it's time to return to the very human chaos of the day. You step out of the shrine corridor feeling briefly refreshed, emotionally, not physically. Your knees still feel like soft clay, your shoulders complain loudly, and the scent of incense clings to your tunic like it's trying to become your new personality. But you don't get more than 10 seconds of relative peace before someone from the outer courtyard rushes toward you, waving both arms like there's a fire. There isn't a fire, thank the gods, but there is something just as demanding, the Nile's seasonal mood swings. The master wants the storage area checked, the servant pants. They're preparing for the next flood cycle. Everything must be secured. Right, flood season, the best of times, the worst of times, depending entirely on how cooperative the Nile decides to be this year. Ancient Egyptians love to call the river the giver of life, but when the waters rise too high or too low, the giver of life can suddenly become the giver of chores, chaos, and mild existential dread. You head toward the outer storerooms with a quiet sigh. The sun hits you full in the face again, heat like a wall, and you shield your eyes as you walk. The ground beneath your feet is dry and cracked in some places, dusty in others. Soon, all of this will change. The water will creep up, filling the banks, soaking into the fields. If the flood is generous, crops will flourish. If not, well, your ration bowls will look uncomfortably empty in a few months. Historians still argue whether average households anticipated the flood with excitement or anxiety. You lean firmly toward anxiety, because whenever the Nile decides to shift its mood, servants are the first to scramble. You reach the storage area, a series of mud brick rooms with wooden doors, packed with everything the household might need during and after the flood. Grains, tools, linens, baskets, pottery, even a stack of fishing nets because the master insists one should always be prepared. You take stock of the place and instantly spot the issue. Several jars have been left too close to the floor, perfectly fine most of the year, but disastrous if the waterline creeps higher than expected. You begin lifting them one by one, shifting them to higher racks. The jars are heavy, full of barley, lentils, dried fish, and oil. You brace your legs and lift each one with care, praying you don't drop anything. Last year, one servant dropped a jar of oil. The smell lingered for weeks, and everyone hated him just a little bit until it finally faded. You adjust another jar, then wipe your forehead with the back of your hand. Sweat beads instantly reform, because the storage room is a heat trap under the mid-morning sun. You feel like you're roasting in your own clothes. You mutter something sarcastic about the Nile taking its time getting here. If the flood arrived a little earlier, maybe the heat would be less dramatic. Probably not, but complaining is free. You move to the next task, checking woven baskets for weak spots. You crouch down and run your fingers along the edges, searching for frayed fibers. Egyptian baskets are sturdy, made from palm leaves and reeds, but they get brittle from heat. You find a loose weave and poke it lightly. A few strands snap. You groan. Of course. You carry the broken basket outside to repair it in the shade. As you sit down, the younger servant approaches holding 2 clay pots. "The flood charts," he whispers grandly. You blink. "The what?" He hands you a board with charcoal marks on it, scribbles representing the household predictions for the rising water. "Very official," he says, trying not to laugh. You shake your head. "Those aren't charts. That's a frustrated scribe doodling waves." He shrugs. "Same energy." You begin fixing the basket while he sits beside you, placing the clay pots into a larger storage bin. As you weave new strands into the damaged section, he asks, "Do you think the flood will be high this year?" You shrug. "Maybe. Maybe not. The Nile does what it wants, like a cat with water confidence." He smiles. "My uncle says the river listens to prayers." You snort. "If the Nile listened to anything, it'd flood on the one day we weren't exhausted." A breeze rolls through the courtyard, warm but welcome. You tilt your head back, savouring it. The air carries the scent of silt, greenery, and something floral from the nearby storage of dried herbs. It almost feels like the river is reminding you of its presence, as if to say, "I'll be there soon, stay ready." Once the basket is repaired, you stand and stretch your stiff back. You move on to checking the fishing nets, ensuring there are no holes large enough for fish to escape. Egyptian nets are made of fine cords, tied intricately. You run your fingers along the knots, tightening ones that have loosened. As you work, another mainstream historical fact pops into your mind. Many households relied on fishing not just for food, but for trade. A well-prepared storeroom could mean a prosperous season. A poorly prepared one, hunger and frustration. You finish the nets and turn your attention to the grain bags. They must be stacked, carefully, high enough to avoid water, low enough to remain stable. You adjust them one by one, patting each stack into neatness. The dust feels soft, warm, familiar against your hands. As you work, the old groundskeeper shuffles in. He's ancient, half wisdom, half stubbornness, and carries a crooked walking stick. He watches you for a moment, then says, "Water comes early this year." He always says mysterious things like that. You ask cautiously, "How do you know?" He taps his stick on the ground. Earth feels different. That is absolutely not helpful, but also, you choose to believe him. Old people always know things. You finish the last of the adjustments, brush your hands off and exhale. The storeroom is secure, the jars are lifted, the baskets repaired, the tools sorted, the nets tightened. You've done your part to prepare for whatever mood the Nile decides to wake up with. As you step back outside, you notice a subtle shift in the air. The faint smell of moisture carried on the breeze. Maybe it's imagination, or maybe it's a sign. Either way, you pause for a moment, letting the sensation settle over you. The sun still beats down, your tunic sticks to your skin, your arms and legs ache. But for now, your tasks here are done. Another moment in a servant's day, shaped by a river they cannot control but always have to adjust to. And there's still so much more waiting for you. You make your way back toward the inner rooms, dust clinging to your ankles like it's trying to claim you as part of the household architecture. After dealing with storage, flood prep, and enough heavy lifting to qualify as informal weight training, you'd expect someone, anyone, to say, "Take a moment." But no, the next task finds you before you even find a sip of water. Cleaning the master's living spaces, you stifle a sigh. Cleaning the home you serve in is one thing. Cleaning it while knowing your sleeping area is basically a dusty corner with a mat that has lost the will to cushion is another entirely. Cleansing the home, not yourself, you murmur under your breath, because that's the paradox every servant in Egypt silently lives with. The household must sparkle. You can sparkle later. Maybe. You push aside the linen curtain and enter the main living room. Sunlight streams in through the window slits, illuminating particles of dust swirling lazily through the air, mocking you. dancing like tiny desert spirits that know you'll never catch them all. The room is beautiful. Polished wooden stools, painted chests, neatly folded linens, and pottery jars whose designs are probably worth more than your entire yearly ration allowance. Your shoulders already ache just looking at the space. You grab your broom, a bundle of reeds tied tightly at the base, and begin sweeping the floor. The smooth tiles clack softly under your feet as you move. You sweep in practiced arcs, gathering dust into a neat pile. But every time you feel satisfied, a stray breeze sneaks through the window and scatters the dust like confetti. You groan. Really? Really? The dust offers no apology. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Even elite houses struggled with dust. Egypt, after all, is basically one giant sand-producing machine. Archaeologists have found ancient cleaning tools, brushes, brooms, scrapers, proving that dust battles were daily, exhausting, and utterly unwinnable. You're simply continuing a 3,000-year-old losing fight. As you sweep, the younger servant wanders by with a bucket of water. He peers into the room and says, "Looks good." You pause. "I've been in here 30 seconds, he nods. "Yes, but that's 30 seconds more than it takes for Lady Monet to find something wrong." You stare at him. "Don't remind me." He grins and disappears down the hallway. You carry the dust outside, dump it into the courtyard, then return to tackle the next task, wiping down every surface. You dip a cloth into a bowl of cool, scented water and begin polishing the wooden furniture. The scent is faint, something like lotus mixed with lemongrass, and it briefly distracts you from the monotony of the task. You run the damp cloth along the chest's carved edges. Dust gathers in the grooves, stubborn and smug. You use a small reed pick to tease debris from the fine lines. As you work, a quirky tidbit surfaces in your thoughts. Some Egyptians believed that dust carried messages from protective spirits, tiny warnings or blessings. If that's true, the spirits around this house are chatty. You move to the painted wall niches next, brushing gently so you don't smear the pigments. The scenes, birds, flowers, geometric borders, are vibrant even after years of sunlight exposure. You admire the artistry for a moment. Then your broom reminds you by falling over with a loud clatter. You jump. A nearby cat jumps. The broom remains unapologetic. After resetting the broom, you continue your rounds. Next up, linens. You enter the sleeping quarters and begin folding sheets and cushions. The linen feels cool against your hands, softer, finer than anything you've ever worn. The mistress owns dozens of sets, each woven tightly and bleached to perfection. You carefully fold them, smoothing out wrinkles with practiced efficiency. You think about your own linen. Thin, rough, questionably clean depending on the week. Your bathing time is limited, sometimes daily, sometimes not, depending on workload and whether the well is cooperative. Historians still argue whether servants had structured bathing routines or only bathed when chores allowed. Your personal bath schedule could be summarized as, maybe tonight, if the universe is feeling generous. You finish folding the last sheet and move toward the washing area with a pile of used linen. The washing space is small, tucked near the courtyard, with a shallow basin and drying racks. You fill the basin with water, carefully rationed, and begin scrubbing the cloth against a smooth stone. The repetitive sloshing sound echoes through the area. Your hands sting slightly from the friction. If you were a noble, you'd soak your hands in fragrant oils afterward. As a servant, you'll be lucky to get a moment to stretch your fingers before the next round of chores. As you lift the wet linen, water drips onto your feet. The cool droplets are refreshing. You close your eyes briefly, enjoying the sensation. Don't get too comfortable, you mutter to yourself. The drying racks aren't going to fill themselves. You wring each piece tightly and hang them in neat rows. The sun hits the fabric, illuminating it like glowing sheets of gold. It's beautiful in a way, Egyptian linen catching the light, turning mundane laundry into an art display. But the moment you admire it, a stray gust of wind slaps a sheet against your face. You sputter. The wind offers no apology. You take a moment to breathe, leaning one hand on the drying rack. Your work here is almost done, but before you leave, you quickly rinse your arms, letting the water cool your skin. It isn't a real bath, not even close, but it's better than nothing. You turn back toward the house and catch a glimpse of your reflection in a polished bronze mirror leaning nearby. You look. Tired, dusty, slightly wilted. But there's a hint of pride too. The home is spotless, orderly, calm, a place where everything looks serene and effortless. Because you made it so. You step inside again and begin the final sweep of the hallway. Your broom whispers over the floor as the light shifts, signalling the slow march toward late afternoon. You've cleaned every room, sorted every linen, polished every surface. But your own bathing time, that will depend entirely on whether anything unexpected happens in the next few hours. And in an Egyptian household, something unexpected always happens. You finish the hallway sweep and allow yourself one tiny breath of satisfaction, just one, before you hear the 3 words every servant dreads: night watch, rotation, change. Already, you blink up at the slant of sunlight cutting across the courtyard. The day isn't done yet, but preparations for evening duties begin long before darkness even thinks about arriving. And you, of course, have drawn the short read today, night watch, which, in an Egyptian household, means patrolling quiet hallways with a clay lamp that flickers whenever you breathe, guarding rooms full of valuables you're never allowed to touch, and pretending you aren't imagining every shadow morphing into a potential threat. This isn't glamour, it's unpaid paranoia. The steward hands you a small oil lamp and a wooden baton, not a weapon, more a symbolic encouragement stick. You bow your head, accept them, and try to ignore the sensation of dread curling quietly in your stomach. The steward recites the usual instructions: check the gates, watch for stray animals, monitor the storerooms, ensure no one wanders too close to the family quarters. Simple enough. Except simple tasks never stay simple when it's dark. You begin your shift by checking the outer gate. The sunlight is lower now, softer but still warm, casting long shadows across the ground. You run your hand along the wooden frame, ensuring the latch is secure. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your mind. Larger Egyptian households sometimes employed dedicated guards, but more often, servants rotated through night watch duties, even if it meant losing precious sleep. Congratulations, you're part of that proud, exhausted tradition. You test the gate again, tugging it twice for good measure, then turn to begin your rounds. The courtyard looks different now, quieter, emptier, the earlier brightness fading into muted gold. The shadows stretch long and thin, creating dark corners where your imagination eagerly sets up camp. You walk toward the storerooms, lamp in hand. Its soft, wavering light paints wobbly circles on the mud brick walls. Every time the flame flickers, your heart rate leaps, convinced something moved behind you. You remind yourself that you've survived dozens of night watches before. Absolutely nothing dramatic happened. Except that one time a loose cat knocked over a jar and you nearly transcended your own body. You reach the storerooms and begin your inspections. You glance over the stacked grain bags, the carefully raised jars, the baskets you repaired earlier. Everything is still in place. You listen carefully. No rustling, no suspicious noises, just the soft hum of a settling building. You take a moment to steady your breathing. Then, a soft thump. Your soul momentarily leaves your body. You slowly turn your lamp toward the sound. The shadows shift. Something moves. Your grip on the baton tightens so hard your knuckles ache. Then, emerging from behind a basket, cat. A very judgmental cat. You exhale all at once, muttering, "Do not do that," while the cat blinks like you're the unreasonable one. It wanders past you, tail high, clearly unimpressed with your entire existence. You place a hand over your chest and take a moment to recover. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your mind. Egyptians considered cats sacred, protective, and noble, but none of that stops them from terrifying unsuspecting servants at dusk. With your dignity barely intact, you continue the rounds. As the sky deepens from gold to dusky violet, the air cools slightly. You welcome it. For the first time all day, the heat isn't trying to evaporate your soul. You step into the inner hallway and check the doorways, ensuring curtains are properly drawn and lamps trimmed for evening use. You glance out a window slit toward the horizon. The last streaks of sunlight fade, surrendering to twilight. The world becomes quieter, the kind of quiet that amplifies every tiny sound. A bird chirps, a pottery jar cracks as it settles. Somewhere in the distance, a donkey brays like it just lost an argument. You continue through the household, lamp raised. The corridor leading to the private quarters is darker, and your imagination begins writing dramatic scenarios you definitely did not request. You whisper to yourself. Historians still argue whether ancient servants feared nighttime spirits or just the dark hallways in general. Spoiler, it's both. The lamp flickers as you approach the northern rooms. You slow your pace. The doorway curtain rustles, though there's no breeze. You stop. Listen. Another rustle. You inhale sharply and brace yourself. Then a servant steps out, half asleep, wrapped in a blanket, hair sticking up. "Is it dinner yet?" they mumble, wandering off before you can answer. You sag with relief and mutter, "Why is everyone determined to shorten my lifespan today?" You finish checking the family sleeping chambers, straightening mats, adjusting curtains, ensuring nothing seems disturbed. You tread as lightly as possible, aware that waking a noble before they are ready is a mistake you'd remember for the rest of your life. Next, you head toward the rooftop. The ladder creaks as you climb, and the night air greets you instantly. Cool, whispery, carrying the faint scent of the river. The stars begin emerging above, slow and steady, like shy performers stepping onto a stage. The rooftops of neighbouring homes sit like quiet silhouettes beneath the deepening sky. Up here, the world feels different. Bigger, softer, almost peaceful. You check the rooftop storage baskets, make sure no linens have blown loose, then walk the perimeter. From this height, you can see the fields stretching dark and wide. Far off, the faint shimmer of Nile water reflects the moonlight. You pause, watching it. The gentle ripple looks calm enough now, but soon, when the floodwaters rise, everything will change again. A breeze brushes across your face, carrying sand and coolness in equal measure. You take a quiet moment to breathe it in. Up here, with no nobles watching, no lamps to maintain, no tusks immediately calling your name, the world feels momentarily manageable. But your break ends when you hear a pottery jar crash somewhere below. You jolt. What now? You rush back down the ladder, lamp swaying dangerously. You hurry to the corridor where the sound came from. A jar lies shattered, oil pooling across the tiles. A small servant child stands nearby, eyes wide. I tripped, they say meekly. You exhale through your nose, trying not to look as dramatic as you feel. Go get a towel, you say softly. They nod and run off. You kneel beside the mess, wiping the oil carefully. Your lamp casts a soft glow on the shards, and for a moment the reflections make them look like little golden stars scattered across the floor. Beautiful, in an infuriating way. You gather the pieces, clean the floor, and sigh. The house grows quieter as true night settles in. Your watch continues, more patrolling, more listening, more imagining shadows turning into thieves or spirits, or mischievous cats. But slowly, steadily, the hours pass. And even though you're tired, bone-tired, soul-tired, you keep moving. Because keeping the household safe is just another part of the job, even if nobody thanks you for it. You lift the lamp again, take a steadying breath, and disappear deeper into the quiet, shadowed hallways. Night has only just begun. You continue through the dim hallway, lamp flickering, shadows stretching long and thin around you. After the shattered jar incident and the rogue cat ambush, you're fully prepared for more chaos. But instead, the house settles into that strange evening stillness. Quiet, but not peaceful. Quiet in the way that makes your ears hyper-attentive to every tiny sound. A distant drip, a creaking beam, someone snoring 2 rooms away with the gusto of a disgruntled hippo. Night watch is supposed to be solemn and vigilant, but in reality it's an oddly human time of day, when everyone becomes a little less formal, a little more honest, and a little more weird. And tonight, your fellow servants are drifting toward that twilight zone where humor becomes a survival mechanism. You turn a corner and nearly collide with the younger servant, who jumps like he wasn't expecting you either. His lamp wobbles dangerously. "Oh!" he squeaks. "I thought you were something else." "You mean a ghost?" you ask with a raised eyebrow. He nods with full seriousness. "Or a jackal-headed spirit wandering the halls looking for snacks?" You blink. "A jackal-headed. Why would a spirit need snacks?" He shrugs. "I don't know. Eternal beings need hobbies?" You sigh. "Go patrol the West Hall before the steward sees you talking nonsense." He scurries off, humming to himself. You shake your head, but you can't help smiling. Humor is a small thread you all cling to, a quiet rebellion against exhaustion. And honestly, you need it right now. You return to your route, but soon find yourself stepping into the servant courtyard. A small, open space tucked between the storage areas and your sleeping quarters. It's darker here, lit only by the moon and a few dim lamps. But you hear it immediately. Low voices, soft laughter, the unmistakable sound of people trying to be quiet and failing miserably. You follow the noise and find a small cluster of servants sitting on overturned baskets, sharing scraps of leftover bread and a bowl of what might generously be called evening stew. They wave you over. Night watch or not, you pause, just for a moment. You join them on a crate near the wall. Someone hands you a small piece of bread, stale, but still a gift. Another servant, a wiry woman with a sharp tongue and the best gossip channels in the household, leans closer. "You missed the best part," she whispers. "The master tripped on his own sandals before dinner and blamed the floor gods. You snort so abruptly you nearly inhale your bread." "The floor gods?" She nods gravely. "They've apparently offended him." "That tracks," you reply. A mainstream historical fact drifts into your thoughts. Egyptian households often had dozens of servants working closely together, building little subcultures of humour, frustration, whispered gossip, shared meals and camaraderie. This was their emotional support network, the one thing that kept long days from feeling unbearable. Someone else pipes up. "Did you hear about the steward's missing jug?" You raise an eyebrow. "The fancy one?" He nods. "He blames a thief." You lean back. "Was there a thief?" The group exchanges looks. The wiry woman smirks. "No, it was the cat. Knocked it straight out the window." You burst into a laugh so sudden you have to cover your mouth. The idea of the steward losing his mind over a mystery thief while a smug feline strolls by is exactly the kind of petty comedy that fuels servant morale. Another servant, older and perpetually exhausted, lifts a ladle of stew. "Eat," he says. "It tastes better when you're too tired to care." You take a small sip. He's right. It's terrible, but also comforting. Someone asks about your night watch shift and you recount, with dramatic hand gestures, the way the cat scared 10 years off your life earlier. The group laughs softly. The wiry woman wipes a tear. Imagine explaining that to the mistress. "Sorry, my lady, the night watch fainted because a cat walked too confidently." Confidence is threatening, you argue, especially in the dark. The older servant nods sagely. Cats fear nothing. That's why they get worshipped. A quirky tidbit surfaces. Some Egyptians believed cats had protective magical powers at night, guarding homes from evil. You glance around the courtyard. Considering how many near-heart attacks these cats have caused you, you're not convinced they're on your side. You linger a few more minutes, letting the laughter warm you more than the thin stew. Conversations drift from gossip to jokes, to small complaints about aching feet and missing sandals. Someone impersonates the steward's dramatic sighs. Someone else tries, and fails, to mimic the mistress's elegant voice. You all collapse into muffled laughter again, but duty calls. You rise, dust off your tunic and give them a mock salute. "If I'm not back in half an hour, assume the cat's finally got me." They nod solemnly, as if this is a legitimate risk. You return to your rounds feeling lighter, your shoulders less tense, your mind less foggy. Humour is a strange strength. The more you share it, the more you have. The house is quieter now, the kind of quiet that makes soft sounds echo long and low. You walk the halls again, lamp gently swaying. Shadows seem less threatening after the laughter. Even the creaking beams feel like old friends instead of ominous warnings. But suddenly, from the outer hallway, you hear voices. Not servant voices. Someone muffled, grumbling, arguing. You stiffen. Thieves? Drunken workers? Wandering merchants who couldn't find the gate? You approach carefully, lifting the lamp. The shadows move, and two servants burst out of the pantry door covered in flour, coughing with dramatic white puffs. You blink. They blink back. "We were reorganizing," one says, legs dusted in white powder. "Uh-huh," you reply. "And the flour attacked you?" "Yes," they say in unison. You sigh. "I'm reporting this after breakfast tomorrow." "No need," one hisses. "The flour already punished us." You shake your head and continue your watch, leaving them to sort out their powdery shame. As you resume your rounds, lamp swinging, you feel it again. That little spark of camaraderie, humour bubbling under the exhaustion. Servant life is hard, long, often thankless. But these tiny moments of ridiculousness, they keep you going. And honestly, some days laughter is the only luxury you get. You leave the flour-covered culprits behind and continue your slow patrol. the lamp bobbing in your hand like a tiny stubborn moon. Evening has fully settled now, deep, velvety, and humming with the quiet noises of a household easing into night. But you don't get to ease into anything yet. You've reached that stage of the day when your duties shift again, this time toward one of the more bittersweet realities of servant life, tending to clothing, cosmetics, and all the luxurious items you'll never get to enjoy the way the household does. You make your way to the dressing chamber, where the mistress's garments are stored in carved wooden chests. The air here smells faintly of crushed lotus petals, beeswax, and the unmistakable hint of imported oils, rich, fragrant, and absolutely beyond your access, unless you're the one applying them to someone else. You kneel before the open chest and begin sorting the garments. Fine linen tunics, pleated dresses, sashes dyed with rare pigments that you can't pronounce without sounding like you're choking on a date pit. The textiles feel soft under your fingers, cool, smooth, impossibly light. Linen of this quality is woven so tightly it feels like touching quiet water. You lift one dress carefully, giving it a gentle shake to release the folds. A mainstream historical fact appears in your mind. Elite Egyptians obsessed over linen quality. Some garments had thread counts so high they'd impress even modern cloth critics. And here you are, smoothing out pleats so sharp they could cut your self-esteem. You fold the dress precisely, 3 folds, then a long smooth press with your palm. As you place it into the chest, your mind drifts to your own clothing. Rougher linen, uneven stitching, and absolutely no lotus perfume involved. You wear what keeps you cool and functional. The mistress wears what makes her look like she stepped out of a mural, and you get to iron it. Lucky you. You move on to her cosmetics table, a carefully arranged shrine of beauty tools. Tiny stone vessels with lids carved like blooming flowers, palettes of dark coal, pots with scented oils, ivory combs and polished copper mirrors that reflect your face in warped, slightly judgmental shapes. You begin by refilling the coal containers. Using a thin stick, you scrape the cosmetic powder into neat little cones. The dark pigment stains your fingertip instantly. You wipe it off before anyone sees. Last week, a servant walked around with smudged eyeliner for half an hour, and the steward nearly had an aneurysm thinking someone from the household had attempted a fashion experiment. You polish the combs next, rubbing each tooth until it gleams. You straighten the brushes, arrange jars by size, align lids so their decorative carvings all face the same direction, because apparently the gods care about symmetry. As you work, a quirky tidbit floats into your thoughts. Egyptians used all kinds of strange beauty ingredients: honey, crushed minerals, malachite dust, even crocodile dung for certain cosmetic preparations. You glance at the green pigment jar. You sincerely hope that one is the mineral kind. You reach for the oil jars next. The mistress has several: floral oil, lotus oil, almond oil, and something so expensive you're not allowed to pronounce it without supervision. You wipe the jars clean, making sure the carved hieroglyphs glisten in the lamplight. The younger servant appears behind you suddenly, leaning in to sniff one of the jars. "Smells like heaven," he whispers dramatically. You nod. "Well, enjoy it from a respectful distance." "If I ever marry," he mutters, "I want my partner to smell like this." You smirk. "If you ever marry, make sure your partner can afford these jars." He gasps, offended. "Rude, but fair." He wanders off, humming. You turn back to the table and begin placing each item in its assigned position. You know the layout by heart. Comb left, palette center, oils right, mirror angle just so. The mistress will never know you spent 20 minutes perfecting this arrangement, but she will notice if something is off by a hair. Her entire spiritual aura apparently depends on her mirror being angled exactly 7 degrees to the east. Once the dressing table is complete, you begin checking the jewellery. A carved box holds her accessories: bracelets, rings, necklaces of faience beads and gold. You lift a broad collar necklace, feeling its weight shift like a small shimmering river in your hands. The craftsmanship is stunning. The materials are valuable. Your fingers brush over each bead, inspecting the thread for signs of wear. You never get to wear these pieces. You never will. But you care for them like they're fragile miracles, because one broken clasp is enough to send the steward into a philosophical crisis about servant responsibility. You clean each piece gently with a soft cloth. The gold warms under your touch, reflecting lamplight in tiny stars across the table. You pause for a brief moment, just one, to admire the glow. It is beautiful. It is distant. It is not for you. Historians still argue whether servants felt resentment toward their employer's wealth. You're not a historian, but you know the truth. It's a strange blend of envy, humour, resignation, and the occasional urge to roll your eyes so hard they might fall out. Once the jewellery is stored, you lean back on your heels, flexing your wrists. The evening is moving steadily toward full night now. The household begins settling into sleep. Soon, the quiet will deepen into that fragile stillness, broken only by soft breathing and the occasional catfight outside. You stand, stretch, and move to tidy the remainder of the room. You straighten cushions, fold blankets, put away stray sandals. You pause when you spot a small smear of cosmetic powder on the floor. Of course. You crouch and wipe it away, muttering, "May the gods grant me strength," because washing out coal stains is one of the universe's most underrated torments. Just as you finish the last task, the younger servant pokes his head into the room again. "You survived," he whispers dramatically. "Barely," you sigh. "Did you get to try any of the oils?" "No." "Not even a little?" "No." He nods, looking personally offended on your behalf. "One day," he says, "we're going to smell amazing." You chuckle. "One day, maybe." You blow out the lamp, leaving only the moonlight filtering through the window. The room looks serene, perfect, untouched. Just the way the household likes it, and none of them will ever know the work behind it. You step out quietly, closing the curtain behind you, ready for whatever the night still has in store. You step into the dim corridor again, the curtain falling softly behind you, and for a moment you hope, just hope, that the next task might involve something gentle, something light, maybe even something that doesn't twist your spine into a question mark. But the universe clears its throat and says, absolutely not, because the next thing waiting for you is one of the quiet truths of servant life, one you rarely speak out loud. Your body hurts. A lot. Sure, you're young enough to keep moving, strong enough to lift water jars, and nimble enough to dodge cats and nobles with equal fear. But day after day, chore after chore, the strain builds. Injuries accumulate like little debts your body keeps track of, even when you pretend they don't matter. You make your way toward the side courtyard where the wash basin sits. It's nearly empty now, just a shallow bowl with leftover water. You kneel beside it and splash your face, letting the coolness sink into your skin. For a moment it feels heavenly. Then your lower back spasms, reminding you that heaven is temporary and pain is permanent. You sit back on your heels, stretching your hands in front of you. Your fingers crack loudly. Too loudly. They ache from spinning thread, from weaving, from cutting reeds, from polishing furniture. Your knuckles look slightly swollen, and your nails are ragged from constant scrubbing. A mainstream historical fact floats into your mind. Servants in ancient Egypt often developed chronic joint pain early in life due to repetitive labour, heavy lifting, and long hours under harsh conditions. No surprise there. The human body wasn't designed to grind grain, carry jars, weave linen, and scrub floors all in the same day, every day, forever. You flex your wrists again. They protest, loudly. But you don't have time to linger in self-pity because your feet begin complaining next. You pull off one sandal and inspect a blister forming on the side of your toe. Angry, swollen, glowing like a tiny sun of pain. You hiss through your teeth. "Let me guess," a familiar voice says behind you. It's the wiry woman from earlier, sharp-tongued, perceptive, and always carrying too many opinions. Your feet are starting their nightly rebellion. You nod. One blister, one cut, and I'm pretty sure one toe has decided to retire, she snorts. Lucky. Last week I tripped on a fish basket and twisted my ankle. The steward said, "Walk it off." So I walked, and the ankle walked too, just not in the same direction. You chuckle, which triggers a cough because your throat is dry from dust. She hands you a small jar. "Use this. My aunt makes it. It helps." You open the jar cautiously. Inside is a thick herbal paste, greenish, gritty, vaguely suspicious. You sniff it. It smells like crushed mint, river mud, and something spicy. "What's in this?" She shrugs. "Plants, leaves, roots, maybe lizard breath. I don't ask questions." You dab a bit of the paste on your blister. The sting is immediate, followed by a strange cooling sensation, followed by something like numbness. You blink. This works. Told you, she smirks. Miracle goo? As she limps away, you lean back against the wall, letting your body settle for a moment. You stretch your neck slowly, left, right, forward, each movement releasing a soft crack that echoes in the courtyard. You imagine each crack is one more complaint escaping your bones. Your mind drifts to a quirky tidbit you once heard from an elderly labourer. Some Egyptians believed that pain in the joints meant a tiny, mischievous spirit was stuck inside, tugging at your bones. The cure? Oils, herbs, and a stern talking to directed at your own elbows. Honestly, considering your day, yelling at your elbows doesn't feel that far-fetched. You take a deep breath and rub your lower back. The muscles there feel like rope. Tight, overworked, fraying slightly at the edges. You try to massage them with your knuckles, but your arms are too tired to put in the effort. You settle for leaning forward and pressing your forehead to your knees. It doesn't help, but it feels emotionally dramatic, so you go with it. You stand slowly, very slowly, testing each joint like it's a puzzle piece you're not fully confident fits anymore. Your hips pop, your knees creak, your ankles wobble, you groan. Are you okay? The younger servant asks as he appears with a stack of folded cloths. No, you answer honestly. Same, he says cheerfully. You laugh. It hurts, but you laugh anyway. You take a cloth from his pile, one soft enough to be used for poultices, and wrap it around your wrist. The warmth helps. A little. Not enough. But servant life teaches you that even small relief feels like a luxury. You head inside again, moving slowly through the hallway. Your feet drag slightly against the floor. Your shoulders slump. You're trying to stay upright, trying to keep going, trying not to let the exhaustion swallow you whole. Historians still argue whether ancient servants had access to regular medical care or if they relied entirely on home remedies. Based on your experience, home remedies, and hope, mostly hope, because in reality, your back hurts from lifting, your feet hurt from walking, your hands hurt from weaving, your arms hurt from scrubbing, your joints ache from everything, your eyes burn from smoke and dust, your stomach growls from missing lunch, your head spins from dehydration and heat, your entire body feels like an overused tool that someone forgot to oil. But still, you move, you work, you continue, because the household doesn't pause for pain, and you've long since learned to treat aching muscles as simply another part of the job, like cleaning, carrying, weaving, sweeping. You roll your shoulders one last time, inhale deeply, and whisper to yourself, just keep going. Then you straighten your posture, at least as much as your spine will allow, and head toward your next task. The day isn't finished with you yet. You shuffle through the quiet hallway, body aching in 17 different languages, when another truth of servant life pulls at you. Something softer, deeper, more personal than chores or fatigue. Because while you spend your days tending to the needs of a household that isn't yours, you also have a family of your own, somewhere out there, waiting, worrying, hoping, missing you in ways the household never thinks about. Your relationships, parents, siblings, maybe even children, don't pause just because you're exhausted, but they do bend, strain, and stretch thin under the weight of long work hours. And tonight, you're reminded of that in the simplest way. As you step into the courtyard, you see a small basket resting near the gate, your name scratched into the clay tag hanging from the handle. Your breath catches. That's from home. You kneel down and open it carefully. Inside, a small piece of bread, a handful of dried dates, a folded scrap of linen, and a tiny clay bead painted with a fading pattern. The bead makes your chest tighten. It's from your younger sibling. They used to wear it on a string around their wrist, some childish trinket you helped them make years ago. You hold it between your fingers, the cool clay warming slowly against your skin. Your throat tightens. You swallow hard. The younger servant appears behind you, peering over your shoulder. From your family, you nod. He sits beside you quietly, giving you space. He doesn't tease this time, doesn't joke, just sits. You going to see them soon? He asks gently. You shrug with one shoulder. Maybe on the next rest day. When's that? You huff a laugh. Whenever the gods feel generous. A mainstream historical fact drifts through your thoughts. Many Egyptian servants lived away from their families for long stretches, working in elite households or for higher-ranking officials. They were allowed visits, but irregularly, whenever workload, distance, or permission allowed. It made maintaining relationships feel like trying to hold water in cupped hands. Possible, but fragile. You close the basket and clutch it lightly. "I miss them," the younger servant nods. "I miss mine too. My mother keeps sending me bread like I'm starving." You raise an eyebrow. "Are you not starving?" He considers this. "Okay, yes, but that's beside the point." You laugh weakly. It feels good to laugh. You stand and carry the basket to your small resting corner. Just a mat, a jug, and a folded cloth. You place the bead carefully under your mat, the way you used to hide precious things from your siblings. As you smooth the fabric, a memory flickers. Your younger sibling running barefoot by the river, hair wild, laughter bright, face sticky with date syrup. You swallow another wave of homesickness. Your relationships aren't the only things strained by. This life. Love. Romantic love. Folds under servant schedules like papyrus left in the rain. When you're awake before sunrise and asleep long after dark, where do you find time to meet someone? To talk? To share more than hurried greetings? The wiry woman from earlier limps into the courtyard with a bowl of leftover stew. She sits beside you without asking. "Got something from home?" she asks. You nod and show her the bead. She exhales softly. "That's sweet." "Yeah." She stirs her stew aimlessly. "My partner lives 2 villages away. I've seen him twice this season. Last time we met, we argued for an hour about whose turn it was to visit. Then we both fell asleep because we were too tired to care." You chuckle. "That sounds romantic." "It was," she says with an eye roll, in a pathetic sort of way. You both sit in silence for a while, companionable, heavy, tired. "Sometimes," she adds, "I think the hardest part isn't the work. It's the missing." You nod slowly. "Yeah." Another servant joins you, an older man with greying hair and soft eyes. He lowers himself carefully, joints cracking loudly enough to draw everyone's attention. "Ugh," he mutters, rubbing his knee. "My wife complains I don't visit enough. I told her, if you want to visit, talk to the steward. She hasn't spoken to me in a week," he grins. "Peaceful at home, I imagine." You shake your head, smiling. Servant families are held together by threads stretched thin over distance, exhaustion, and unpredictable schedules. Some threads hold, some fray. Some snap quietly in the night when no one is watching. You think again about the scrap of linen in the basket. You unfold it now, smoothing it over your knees. Someone stitched a symbol into the corner. Crooked, uneven, done by a hand still learning. Maybe your sibling, maybe your mother, maybe both. Either way, the little stitching is full of love, messy, imperfect, honest love. You refold the cloth and tuck it into your tunic. "That's nice," the younger servant says. "It is," you whisper. You stand slowly, your back protesting, your legs tired, and carry the basket to the kitchen to return the empty container to the visiting family's shelf. You place it down gently, hand lingering on the rim. You want to see them. You want to go home, to sit by the river again, to hear your sibling laugh, to hear your father's stories, to sleep somewhere that isn't a mat tucked behind a storage room. But you take a breath. You're here, working, serving, surviving, and you hope, quietly, with an ache you don't let yourself examine too closely, that your family knows you haven't forgotten them, that you're doing this for them in some small way, that you'll see them soon, maybe next rest day, maybe the one after, maybe when the steward isn't looking. You wipe your eyes quickly before anyone notices. They always notice, and then they'll make jokes you're too tired to deflect. You straighten your tunic, take a deep breath, and step back into the hallway. Because missing people doesn't stop the work, and love, in servant life, isn't a luxury. It's a quiet ember you protect in your chest, hoping it doesn't go out. You step back into the dim corridor, still feeling the warmth of that little bead tucked safely in your tunic. It sits against your chest like a tiny heartbeat, a quiet reminder that you belong to something beyond chores and commands. But as you move down the hall, your thoughts drift toward the other force that shapes your life just as much as your family does. Faith. Not the elegant, temple-sized, gold-plated faith of kings and priests. No, the everyday kind. The kind servants cling to in the cracks of their long days. Beliefs that comfort. Beliefs that control. Beliefs that help you make sense of a world where you work until your muscles tremble, where fortunes rise and fall with the mood of the Nile, where a single mistake can earn you a week of extra chores. You stop beside the small window slit overlooking the courtyard. The moonlight paints the empty space silver. Somewhere outside, a frog croaks near a water basin, an oddly soothing sound. You lean against the cool wall for a moment, letting your mind drift where it rarely has time to go, into your own quiet beliefs. A mainstream historical fact slips in. Ancient Egyptians lived surrounded by gods, hundreds of them, huge ones like Ra and Osiris, household ones like Bez or Taweret, and nature spirits tied to rivers, plants, and even doorways. Some gods protected you, some scared you into behaving, some you prayed to even when you weren't sure they were listening. You breathe slowly. You think of Bez, the squat, lion-faced household protector who watches over sleeping families, mothers, and children. You've always liked him. He's fierce but kind, strange-looking but comforting. When you were a child, your mother used to carve his face crudely onto a piece of wood and tuck it under your mat. "Keep nightmares away," she'd say. You still remember that sense of safety. If only he protected servants from blistered feet, or cranky stewards, or heavy water jars. You whisper under your breath, "Bess, keep me awake for the rest of this shift," then chuckle quietly. That's the thing about belief. It slips out naturally, like breathing. As you continue walking, you pass the household's small shrine again. It's silent now, the incense long burned away. But something about it lingers, the soft sense of presence, the impression that you're never quite alone, even when the room is empty. Maybe that's why you, and every servant around you, carry small rituals of your own. On your worst days, you touch the doorframe 3 times for luck. Before carrying full water jars, you mutter a blessing about steady legs. When you sweep a room, you whisper at the dust like you're negotiating a treaty. Before sleep, you sometimes hum a quiet tune your mother taught you, a song to keep wandering spirits away. These aren't official temple practices. No priest would write them on papyrus, but they help. They anchor you when the day blurs into exhaustion. As you continue toward the courtyard, you see a few servants gathering near the fig tree, their shift finally ending. One of them is tracing a tiny symbol into the dirt, a simple eye shape. You know what it means: protection, watchfulness. A little prayer drawn with a fingertip instead of ink. You approach quietly. The wiry woman looks up at you. "Long night?" she asks. You glance at the symbol in the dirt. "Insurance," you say. "Always," she replies. Then she taps the symbol twice, a gesture you've seen dozens of times but never questioned. Another servant chimes in. You hear the scribe say the dead watch over us. You shrug. Depends which ancestor. Some of mine were probably too busy arguing. They laugh softly, sleepy warm laughter that melts into the night air. But belief does more than comfort you. It shapes your work, controls your duties, influences what you must do, when you must do it, and why everything matters even when it feels tedious. Take the sweeping, for example. It's not just about cleanliness. Dust is considered a sign of neglect, something that could anger household gods. A crooked offering bowl, bad luck. A misaligned statue, spiritual disrespect. A spilled oil lamp, invitation for trouble. Historians still argue whether these beliefs genuinely influenced household behavior or simply justified strict discipline and performance. From where you stand, it's both. Belief gives meaning to tasks. Discipline enforces them, and you live in the middle, carrying out duties that feel spiritual one moment and purely exhausting the next. You walk toward the storage rooms again, checking lamps as part of your final rounds. The flame in your own lamp wavers, casting soft shadows along the walls. Shadows that, at this time of night, look just supernatural enough to make you straighten your spine and whisper a quiet prayer to any deity listening. Let nothing weird happen. The wind picks up slightly, stirring the curtains. You slow down, holding your lamp steady. For a moment, the air feels thick, like something unseen has walked past you. The hair on your arms lifts. You freeze. Then, a frog croaks loudly, echoing down the hallway like a comedic drumbeat. You exhale sharply. Not funny. From somewhere behind you, the younger servant whispers, "Did you see something?" You shake your head. "Just my imagination reminding me I'm tired." He nods. Mine reminds me of spirits. Yours is nicer. You smirk. Barely. He rubs his arm. My aunt says spirits walk stronger during the flood season. You groan softly. Why would you tell me that now? He shrugs. It's cultural knowledge. Keep your culture away from my nerves. You both laugh under your breaths as you continue walking. Finally, you reach the courtyard again. The sky above is full of stars, so many they almost blur into white mist. The moon hangs low, glowing softly. You pause for a moment, letting its light wash over you. Belief is strange like that. Some days it comforts you. Some days it scares you. Some days it simply becomes part of the background hum of life, like the sound of insects or the smell of the river at dusk. But tonight it's a reminder that even if your work feels endless and your exhaustion feels ancient, you're still part of something bigger, something old, something deeply woven into the land, the river, and the people who walked before you. And maybe, just maybe, those quiet gods, household or otherwise, see the work you do, even if the nobles never will. You take a slow breath, let it settle deep inside you, and turn toward the next task with steadier steps. Faith might not lighten your load, but it helps you carry it. You stand for a moment under the open sky, breathing in the cool night air. It tastes softer than the daytime heat, less like dust, more like calm. Your lamp flickers gently in your hand, and the courtyard settles into a deep, sleepy quiet. After all the weight, all the tasks, all the aching muscles and ghost stories and half-laughs shared in the shadows, you finally reach a rare pocket of the servant's day. The small victories, the tiny rewards, the moments that don't fix anything but somehow make everything feel a little more bearable. You head back inside toward the small prep room where the kitchen servants store leftovers. It's late enough that the cooks have retired, the fire in the oven reduced to glowing embers. The room is warm but not burning, glowing rather than blazing. And there, sitting on the table, is a bowl, a glorious bowl. Your portion of dinner. It's not big, it's not fancy, it's definitely not noble food, but it's warm and it's yours. A simple stew of lentils, herbs, and maybe, a scrap of fish if the cook was in a good mood. You sit down on an overturned crate and take your first real bite of the day. The warmth travels from your tongue to your chest to your very bones. You sigh softly. This is a reward. A tiny one, but still a reward. The younger servant enters quietly, rubbing sleep from his eyes. You eating alone? He asks. Not anymore, you say, sliding the bowl a little to the left so he can steal a spoonful if he wants. He sits beside you and sighs deeply, the sound of someone who has carried too many baskets and dodged too many supervisors for one day. I heard the mistress said the courtyard looked nice today, he whispers. You blink. Praise, real praise, even second-hand praise. You savour it like honey. A mainstream historical fact comes to mind. While servants rarely received formal recognition, households sometimes gave small verbal compliments, better rations, or a moment's rest as subtle rewards. Unrecorded, uncelebrated, but real. And you cling to those moments the way desert plants cling to morning dew. The wiry woman joins you next, carrying a piece of slightly stale bread. She sits on the other crate and tears off a piece, dipping it into the stew. Steward's going to give extra figs tomorrow morning, she says casually. Apparently the ritual went well. The master's in a good mood. You raise an eyebrow. How do you know? She smirks. Because he hummed today. He never hums. Last time he hummed, we got fresh dates. Ooh, the younger servant whispers. Date day? You laugh softly, and it's a real laugh this time, one that lifts something heavy off your chest. These are the moments that keep you going. A fig, a compliment, a joke shared under moonlight, the rare chance to sit down without being yelled at, bread that wasn't too stale, a dropped chore that someone else quietly handled for you. 10 minutes where your back hurts a tiny bit less. Small victories. You rise after finishing half the bowl, saving the rest for later, even though you know you'll probably eat it within the hour, and head toward the outer storeroom again. You want to double-check the jars now that the night air is cooler. When you arrive, you find that someone has already moved the last jar you meant to lift earlier. You stop. You smile. Someone covered your chore. A small victory. You step back into the hallway and nearly collide with the old groundskeeper. He squints at you, then grunts. You swept the North Hall nicely today. You blink again. That's almost a compliment. Thank you, you say quietly. He shrugs. Don't let it go to your head. Then he wanders off. You grin. Servant life doesn't offer big triumphs. You won't get gold. You won't get titles. You won't get feasts or statues or even a named mention in anyone's stories. But you do get this. A warm bowl of stew, a fig that wasn't bruised, a laugh shared when the steward wasn't looking, a moment of rest hidden behind a drying rack, a tiny clay bead from home, a supervisor who didn't yell, a cat that didn't attack, this time, a quiet nod from the older weaver, a little more water in your jar than usual, a shift where nothing broke, a night where no one made you redo the cushions, an unexpected thank you, whispered too softly to be recorded in history. These tiny things string together like beads on a worn necklace, frayed, mismatched, but precious. A quirky tidbit comes to mind. Some Egyptians believe that the gods rewarded small kindnesses more than grand offerings. A piece of bread shared, a lamp trimmed for someone who was tired, a chore completed quietly. Tonight feels like that, full of little unrecorded blessings. As you step outside again, the breeze shifts. It's cooler now, almost tender. The stars shimmer like someone scattered salt across the sky. In the distance, a dog barks lazily. A cat jumps onto a wall. A faint scent of lotus drifts from someone's open window. And for a brief, fleeting moment, you feel something warm in your chest. Something soft, glowing, the opposite of exhaustion. Hope. Hope that tomorrow might offer another tiny victory. Hope that you'll see your family soon. Hope that the Nile will flood gently this year. Hope that the steward won't be too dramatic. Hope that sleep, real sleep, will come tonight. You take a deep breath. You hold it. You let it go slowly. The night cradles you like a quiet lullaby. And you move on, following the last tasks of your day, warmed by the tiny joys that make all the hardships just a little bit easier to endure. You make your way toward the final stretch of the night, your lamp dim now, oil low, flames small and soft, almost shy. The household has slipped into full sleep. Even the cats are quieter. The corridors that felt intimidating earlier now feel strangely gentle, like they've unclenched their shoulders along with you. Your feet are heavy, your eyes sting, your spine feels like it's made of old papyrus reeds ready to snap. But there's comfort in knowing you're reaching the end, the very last part of your day, your slow collapse into whatever rest you can salvage before dawn drags you back into motion. You step into the small servant courtyard. The moonlight spills across the ground in a pale, cool sheet, illuminating your sleeping corner tucked behind a stack of storage jars. The air is crisp for the first time today, almost clean. You can finally breathe without feeling the sun's weight pressing against your ribs. You set your lamp on a flat stone, watching the flame wobble gently. One of your fellow servants sits nearby, nodding off mid-sentence as he tries to fold a cloth. Another is already asleep, curled like a cat, one arm under their head. Soft snores float into the air, blending with the distant chirping of insects. You sit down on your mat, thin, worn but familiar. Your bones sink gratefully, sighing louder than you do. You rub your shoulder, then your wrists, then the blister on your toe that's still threatening to revolt. You stretch your legs. Something cracks. You decide not to investigate. A mainstream historical fact drifts softly into your mind. Servants in ancient Egypt were often provided small sleeping spaces on site, sometimes rooms, sometimes corners, sometimes shared quarters. Privacy was rare, comfort was rare. But at the end of a long day, even the simplest mat could feel like a blessing. You lean back against the cool wall, closing your eyes for just a moment. But of course, your brain isn't ready to rest yet. It has one last burst of dramatic creativity left. Every sound becomes suspicious again. A twig snapping, a spirit from the west, a pottery clink, definitely a thief. Footsteps? Probably a cat, but your heart rate spikes anyway. You exhale through your nose. I'm too tired for fear, you whisper to yourself. The younger servant approaches quietly, carrying a tiny piece of leftover bread. He sets it beside you with a shy smile. For the morning, he says softly, you'll wake earlier than me? You nod, touched more deeply than you admit. Thank you. He returns to his mat and collapses instantly. You look at the bread for a moment. Small kindnesses. They matter more than anyone realizes. Your body sinks deeper into the mat as the last tasks of the day settle behind you. You think of everything you've done since sunrise. Cleaning, carrying, weaving, scrubbing, fixing, preparing, tending, guarding. An entire list of work that no one outside the household will ever know. But somehow it still matters. You're the quiet machinery keeping this place from falling apart. A quirky tidbit surfaces in your sleepy mind, something your grandmother once said. The gods favour those who work when no one is watching. You smile faintly. If that's true, you're on the gods VIP list by now. A soft breeze brushes across your face, cool, soothing. The air carries earthy scents, dried reeds, warm dust, faint lotus from earlier, traces of river moisture drifting lazily from the Nile. You breathe in, slower than before, deeper. Your eyelids grow heavier, your muscles loosen slowly, gratefully, like ropes being untied. Your thoughts drift. Past tasks, past worries, past aches, toward dreams, toward your family, toward that hope you clung to earlier. The tiny thread that holds you together. Tonight, you've earned this rest, more than earned it. You lie down fully now, turning onto your side as your body curls into a comfortable shape. The mat warms under you. Your breathing slows. The courtyard hums around you with nighttime sounds, soft, calm, rhythmic. You whisper to yourself, just a few hours. Tomorrow will come. The chores will come. The heat will come. The endless work will come. But not yet. For now, you let go. You exhale one last time, long and slow, and your mind begins to slip gently into the dark, quiet softness of sleep. Your day, your long, exhausting, relentless day, is finally over. And rest, however brief, wraps around you like a cool linen blanket. And now, as the final moments of your day settle into stillness, let the rhythm of this ancient world soften and stretch into something quieter, slower, and easier to breathe in. Imagine yourself lying on that simple mat, the coolness of the night gathering around your tired body, your thoughts drifting like gentle ripples across the Nile at dusk. The lamps are dim, the breeze is soft, and the air no longer asks anything of you. Everything you needed to finish is behind you now, and the world has grown hushed and forgiving. Feel your muscles loosening, your hands unclenching, your breath deepening in long, smooth waves. Each inhale brings in calmness. Each exhale lets the weight of the day melt away. The sounds around you, distant insects, a sleepy rustle of reed mats, the soft sigh of wind, blend into a warm lullaby, steady and soothing, guiding your tired mind toward rest. Let your thoughts drift gently, without direction. Let the soft moonlight wash over your skin, cool and reassuring. You're safe here. You're allowed to rest. You've done enough. More than enough. The day has ended and nothing remains for you to carry now but this quiet moment. Your eyes grow heavier. The air grows softer. The world narrows to a peaceful blur, warm and comforting. And as the night folds around you, let yourself sink deeper and deeper into the stillness, slowly, sweetly, effortlessly. Good night, traveller. You've walked far, worked hard, and now it's time to drift away.